TikTok time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world. We've got the greatest lineup in the history of live streaming right now. All-star lineup of Christians and one closet Christian.
Cameron.
Hey, Cameron's the only one who isn't regularly accused of being a closeted something else, right? Like in IP,
Yeah.
they say he's a secret Catholic. Me, they say I'm secret atheist. AP, they say he's secret Christian. It's a weird thing where everyone just has this funny obsession with saying you're something different.
Hey, what is
Cameron
his title?
Cameron is just in the closet.
What is his title? How one Quran verse refutes Islam. How are you not taking the advantage and turning this into how one Quran verse destroys Islam?
Oh, yeah.
You're supposed to.
Yeah. I just went with his title, but yeah, Cameron. I'm just pretending to educate you, but Cameron already knows this. The over the top. One Quran verse humiliates Muhammad and sends him packing back for Mecca. Something like that. For some reason, just people click on that stuff more.
No, I went a little bit more reserved, but it's I think doing fairly well relative to like the other stuff that I've posted on Islam. So it worked nevertheless. I mean, maybe it could have gotten some more views if I would have been a little bit more bombastic. But
Mr.
it's doing okay.
All right, guys. So we are everyone. We are here to go through Cameron's new video on an argument about Surah 5 verse 75. When were we live on your channel, IP? Was that like 2 days ago or something like that?
Yeah, it was Monday. Yeah, I stream every Monday evening. Yeah.
Yeah, and then so I was on Monday. Me and AP were live on IP's channel, and Cameron jumped in and started asking, "Hey, what do you guys think of Surah 5 verse 75?" And keep in mind, I have not watched your video yet. I clicked on it just to get a thumbnail, but I'm going to watch it here. But you asked our thoughts on Surah 5 verse 75, and you know, I said I'd just basically go with the standard interpretation. As far as making an argument out of it, I said maybe because the Quran thinks that saying they ate food is a refutation of the deity of Christ, or maybe because in that chapter, both earlier and later, there are some hints that the author of the Quran apparently thinks that Mary is part of the Trinity. Is any of that in the ballpark of where you actually go in your video?
Yes. Actually, the response that you gave in the stream with IP was very close. The only thing is that I added in an interpretation of 575 that I've found in the literature that is not as well known. And that's what that was like sort of the main focus in the second half of the video. And I'm prepared to speak a little bit more on that tonight, just to kind of flesh it out a little bit. One thing I didn't do actually is I didn't like argue for a correct interpretation of the verse. I just laid out the different options, and then I was like, well, here's a problem with this option, here's a problem with this option. They ended up being the same problems for each one. But in this video with you guys, I've got several reasons. I'll tell you which interpretation I think is actually plausible, the most plausible. So we can talk about that at some point, but yeah.
There are people who are bringing up the debate that me and AP just finished a little while ago.
Finished.
So before we jump into,
I do need to ask a question. What denomination do these guys represent in Islam?
Ahmadis.
They're like the Mormons of Islam.
Okay.
Not that. No, keep it on.
That's exactly the best analogy.
That's exactly
actually worse than Mormons.
AP's to all the Ahmadis who are watching right now. AP's messing with everybody. Here's the basic idea. I'll give it to you, the simple form, Cameron, because it is important to know. But you have historically, you have Sunnis and a ton of different kinds of Sunnis. You have Shias and several kinds of Shias. In the 19th century, a guy named Mirza Ghulam Ahmed,
Joseph Smith,
he claimed to be the Messiah. He's the second coming of Jesus. Now, according to Orthodox Islam, Jesus was taken up to heaven alive, and Jesus is the Messiah, according to the Quran. Therefore, there's already a Messiah. So he needed Jesus to be dead so that he could claim to be the fully up-to-date Messiah and so on. So they believe Jesus died, but they believe he died in India, right? So they believe in what you might call theistic swoon theory. So there's swoon theory, apparent death theory, which is that Jesus didn't die on the cross. It just looked like he died. So they're different from most Muslims. Most Muslims think that Jesus was not crucified. Ahmadis believe that Jesus was crucified, but that he survived. He survived crucifixion. So again, it's all part of God's plan. So I would call it like theistic swoon theory or theistic apparent death theory, as opposed to just naturalistic version of it. But so Jesus survived. Then he appeared to his disciples and so on. They believe that there's zero evidence of this, but they believe that Jesus actually informed his followers that he survived, and they were aware of this, but the Apostle Paul came in and corrupted it later and so on. No evidence that Christians have ever not believed that he died by crucifixion. But then after that, he packed his bags, moved to India, started preaching in India. And this actually came up in the debate. They argue that there's a Hindu source from the 1st century on Jesus moving there. That did not last long, and fortunately he backed off that silly claim pretty darn quickly. But
I found that very ridiculous because they brought this up. They did indeed, to give them credit. They only very briefly mentioned it at the end of one of their rebuttal sections, I believe, or was it in the opening? I'm not entirely sure. And when I asked about it, because it's something that you raise as evidence, obviously people are going to question the credibility of this piece of evidence. When I asked about it, they then dismissed it as, oh, it's just minor evidence on the side and all that. In Ahmadiyya, it's actually quite a big thing. It is Mirza Ghulam Ahmed,
very big. Yeah, if he's wrong about that, yeah,
making that claim that Jesus survived and went to India, and that there is a Hindu source indicating that, and so on.
Yeah, it's pretty silly. And I was surprised at how, like, one of the guys you guys debated is a guy I debated back in February on this very topic. And they're using a lot of the same arguments I debunked. Like this whole blood and water coming out of the side. Like I cited medical doctors saying that happens with dead bodies, especially dead bodies that have suffered shock or have been severely beaten. And it doesn't say blood and water was gushing out of him or pouring out of him. It just says that blood and water came out of him. It doesn't say this was like gushing. So like they used a lot of really bad arguments that I had debunked, like this whole lost 10 tribes of Israel nonsense, which is a medieval myth. The Bible doesn't talk about missing tribes, let alone went to India, but they're still pushing that despite that being been basically nonsense that's been debunked by scholars.
Yeah, hats off to AP. AP actually jumped in there. He says it doesn't say lost tribes; it says lost sheep. Which
and also
Jesus would have viewed everyone like all kinds of people there as lost sheep, right? Sheep without a shepherd. And he even, matter of fact, he even said that when he's talking. He looked upon them; they were like sheep without a shepherd. So,
well,
and it's a distinction between Israelites and non-Israelites. And the funny thing is, I also brought up that Jesus says there, "I only came for the lost sheep of Israel." If this is supposed to be about the lost tribes, then this means that Jesus had no business with the local Jews. He just came for those lost tribes. If we are going to take,
that's a good point. If he says only for the lost sheep, and you interpret that as lost tribes, why is he talking to those people?
Yeah, why did he spend his whole time in Judea?
Good point. Good point.
Even if you read the opening letter, the opening lines of the letters. The letter of James, it says, to the tribes of Israel. They assumed all the tribes were still there, like either in the diaspora or in Judea. They didn't think there were missing 10 tribes. They just basically assumed they all assimilated into the Jews after the northern kingdom was destroyed, and then after the Babylonian exile ended, all of Israel returned home and became the Jews. So they assumed that all of the tribes were still there.
And Yeah, what you brought up, Mike, about them using the same arguments that you already debunked, that is both a positive about Ahmadis and a negative. It's a positive in the sense that they're not trying to catch people off guard with weird arguments that they've never heard. Like the arguments that we used in our opening, they're the same arguments we would use anytime. We're not trying to catch anyone off guard. Any of the points you can find in videos and live streams we've made before. But notice with the Ahmadis, they use the same arguments. As opposed to, there are people, several Dawa guys, and their goal in going into a debate is to try and stump you by giving you an argument that you never heard of before, so that you're not prepared for it and you don't know what sources to bring up and stuff. So they deliberately try to catch people off guard. And to me, that always seems like a sign of weakness. Now, keep in mind, if you're debating someone, you might have a new argument that people haven't heard before. So that might be a thing, but lots of the Dawa, they'll deliberately pick a stupid, like insanely stupid argument, but it's so obscure that no one's going to be ready for it. And it's something that afterwards, once you actually look up the passage or something like that, you see like, oh my goodness, this is the dumbest thing ever. But anyway, fortunately for Ahmadis, because they are glued to the teachings of Mirza Ghulam Ahmed, they tend to stick with his points and the Ahmadi view. So guess what? He's the one who said that the spices that Jesus was wrapped in were healing spices, that Nicodemus is a doctor, that Jesus went to India to preach to the lost tribes and so on. He's also the one who thinks that there's a reference in the Hindu sources and that they found the tomb of Jesus. And so, by a little side note, he identified multiple different tombs of Jesus over the years. So anyway, it's interesting. Let's
pick him up and see what's there. Am I the only person who finds it a little bit ridiculous that you have a man brutally tortured, crucified, flesh, skin ripped out, and so on, and then he's just treated for 3 days with some herbs, and then he's like totally fine and walking away?
It's silly.
It's the cure for crucifixion, man. Spices, aloes.
Well, they stuck a massive spike into his feet. You couldn't walk for like weeks after something like that would happen. Like if that happened to any of us.
Hey, and then he had to walk to India.
Yeah. Oh, that's so easy. Out of these spikes in his feet, and he just walk around. Hey guys, I survived. It's ridiculous.
Like even if it's through the meat of the foot, like it's still gonna hurt really badly. But if it was like through the bone, like we have Yohanan, that we have archaeological evidence of a crucifixion victim with a nail like still stuck in his heel bone. Like, how do you get that out in the first place?
And that would have been standard because of the purpose, being able to push up on it and stuff like that. Yeah. So very, very weird. I said at the very end of the debate, Cameron, I mentioned that I kind of have a soft spot for Ahmadi because that's what Nabil was. So that's what Nabil was. And people said, he's not a real Muslim. And I was like, what? The dude just spent the last 4 years trying to convince me that Muhammad's a prophet, that the Quran is the word of God. So that's
kind of how I feel about Khalil Andani. Like when people say that he's not a Muslim, like he defends, and that's actually kind of some of the backstory of this.
Don't you have a debate
here
tomorrow?
Yeah, Sam Shamoon and Khalil. Yeah,
on the Islamic dilemma.
Yeah. Yeah, so he's going to be his view of the Injil.
That should be lots of topics have been done to death, and there's not a lot of new stuff and so on. That should be interesting. Sam is probably the best on the planet at defending the Islamic dilemma, but Khalil, I don't know exactly what his view is, and I don't remember exactly where I got it, but he has a different view of even the Quran. He has a different view of what the Quran is and what Quranic revelation is. So, and he's extremely intelligent. So I'm guessing this is going to be pretty interesting, and I don't know.
If I can give a prediction, I think Khalil is going to have a leg up in the philosophy side of things, and then Sam is going to have a leg up in the theology side of things. So I think that's where they might start to talk past each other, because Khalil is going to be, coming at this philosophically. Sam is going to be coming at it theologically, just looking at the different verses and be like, no, your interpretation conflicts with this. And then, Khalil is going to be talking about coherence. And so That's kind of my prediction. I think it's going to be a good conversation. I'm just I'm hoping that it doesn't get too heated or anything.
Yeah, most Muslims consider Khalil like heretical, which I find unfortunate because I think his view is 1,000 times more rational than you get with these Salafis. Like it's just, I find it kind of interesting. It's like you have this really intelligent guy, and they just dismiss him, kick him out. Even he gives a far superior view to what you get with like the Salafis.
Yeah, I mean, and that's actually what this video that we're about to watch is sort of based on. So some of my interactions with Khalil on X basically resulted in this video because his there are limits to Khalil. You know, as awesome as he is, there are limits. So, and I think we're going to see that in this.
Yeah. So
I also feel bad for the fact that he is not a real Muslim. Yeah.
Yeah. So, guys, if anyone anyone is watching and doesn't know what we're talking about, there are different different sects of Islam. We're joking when we say when we make fun of this group or that group. You have the mainstream Salafis. These tend to people who are kind of like them, but they tend to be very aggressive in dawah and trying to convert the world and so on. You have more philosophical types. Khalil is an Ismaili Shia. They tend to be more philosophical, like their entire group. They're also, interestingly, the sect of Islam that pretty commonly believe that Jesus did die by crucifixion. So. So anyway, I have to say, like, there are certain things that I heard Khalil mention. I would be, come on, man, come on. You seriously think Muhammad was defending Islamic Neoplatonism? Are you joking? But then I'll hear him and I'll start seeing his interpretation of some passages like, well, that would kind of fit that passage right there. So anyway, I don't know. It's a weird situation, man. But should be interesting. Guy's definitely smart.
I'm really interested to see what you think about this video then, because this third interpretation that I spend half the video on was, he was a sort of springboard for it. So I'm curious to see if you think that his interpretation of this verse is at all plausible.
Yeah, so we will check. Any final thoughts on the debate before we jump into the video? Let me just clarify on Ahmadis. Just so you know, because they're viewed along the same lines as Mormons, I don't think they're nearly
as heretical.
Yeah, I defend them in the sense that, because the main objection that Muslims use is they believe in someone after Muhammad, therefore they're not Muslims. When all Muslims are supposed to believe in the second coming of Jesus. So they have a weird view about the second coming of Jesus, and that they believe that it already happened. That said, I mean, they believe in the 5 pillars. They believe in the 6 articles of faith. They believe in, but their interpretations of things are filtered through the eyes of Mirza Ghulam Ahmed. And there is a parallel with Mormonism in that they have successors as well, who they have to be in line with their successors. And so they're definitely off. I have a problem with saying they're not Muslims, just because, and I made a video about this once when the accusation was against Nabil, saying he was never a Muslim because he was an Ahmadi. I kind of went through various things Muhammad said about how you are what constitutes a Muslim, and they tend to fit all of these things unless you start getting very strict that you can't deviate from any correct interpretation. But my conclusion is that, well, if you're going to be that strict, almost every Muslim I know of deviates from certain things that Muhammad said in the Hadith and so on. So kind of rough.
So Jesus was a Muslim, but the Ahmadis are not Muslim?
Good point.
I mean, like, really, when you get into the Muslims, I mean, like, it's they splinter so much. I mean, the Sunnis say the Ahmadis are heretics, the Ibadis are heretics, the Shia are heretics. I mean, it's like Rashid said one time, eventually you just get to the guy in his mosque. He's the only real Muslim in his mosque, and he's the only real Muslim.
To be fair, though, there are a lot of Christians who think that a lot of other denominations.
That's true. If you are not, if you do not subscribe to the Baptist Convention of 1872, not 1873, then there's
a lot more progression in Christianity towards unity I've seen, especially as of late, though, which
that'll break down. Sadly.
Wow. I hope so. Not. Long story short, Ahmadis are not real Muslims. That's the conclusion here. And that Mormons are, they're not even as bad as that, or even Mormons. The Mormons are not even as bad as they are. That's the conclusion here. And yeah, we get it. Lots of sects in Islam.
AP says,
I didn't listen. I didn't listen to the whole debate, but there were kind of 2 points that stood out to me. One of them was the bit about Jonah. I heard them talking about Jonah for a little while, so I had to rewind and go listen to the part where they actually explained what their point was. It sounded like they were making a point about typology, how Jesus is the new Jonah, and then they were like, "Well, Jonah was alive in the fish for 3 days, and so that's why he had to have been alive." Like, and so that seemed problematic. And then the other thing was the frequency at which people survive crucifixion. And then you brought up Josephus, and they're like, see, 33%, there's a 33% chance that he's going to survive. Yeah. It's like, okay.
Yeah. So, on the issue of Jonah, that's another thing where they're kind of glued to that because that is part of their sect of Islam. Interestingly, even mainstream Sunni Muslims adopted that over time. I don't know who copied it from who, but like Zakir Naik and Ahmed Deedat, they use the same, argument. And it's just really weird because,
well, you were like, just keep reading. Like, and that's like a very common thing. Like, just keep reading the book that you're quoting from, and then you'll see that the next chapter like deals with it.
Or very frequently the exact same chapter. And that's my real problem. That's why we talked about cherry picking. It's like if you read a verse and you say, here is the and that verse is open to multiple interpretations. And in the exact same chapter, if you just keep reading, it specifically refutes your interpretation, or even more extreme right there, where in the same exact chapter, Jesus, that's where Peter says, this will never happen to you, Lord. And Jesus says, get behind me, Satan. When he specifically identifies the claim that you're saying is his claim, and he says it's satanic, like how is that not a really big tell?
Well, wouldn't they just explain that away by being like, well, that's problematic, so it's not like the actual words that Jesus spoke? Like, it seemed like they would just
say that's interpolated. They're just like, that part was interpolated because that's not what Muslim taught. Therefore, that had to be added in. It's circular reasoning. And they did nonsense with Acts 21. Like, I have never seen
AP actually accused them of deception. AP actually said, now I think you're lying because there's no way you can take this seriously.
I said in Acts 21. You are lying about this.
AP, what's crazy is I was thinking the same thing. It was like, whoa, like I understand what the sign of Jonah. I think you guys really believe that. And I'm thinking when you was talking about Paul in Acts 21 and he confessed it and he publicly repented of the atonement and belief in. It's like
utter nonsense.
Now that's so over the top, silly that it's almost like I don't know.
Yeah, Acts 21 is just like, hey, some people are accusing you of saying Jews should abandon the law of Moses. So take this vow so you could show you're not. There's nothing about him repenting. There's nothing about Jews rejecting the atonement. They're making up so much nonsense.
And as AP pointed out, what in the name of common sense, any of that have to do with the death of Jesus?
Yeah.
His point is that he tries to assert. This is the thing. I called that out later on during the Q&A, and he acted like I was making a false accusation. But he went into that whole direction because of the idea that it was Paul himself who introduced the idea of Jesus, dying and then dying by crucifixion and then being resurrected again, and so that's what he was talking about. That's why we got into that whole topic, and then he started going into the direction of why the resurrection and why the death happened and the atonement and this and that, and then we started talking about how he started claiming that Acts 21 is about the atonement, but originally we only went into that direction because he was claiming that it was Paul himself to whom it was revealed that Jesus died and was resurrected and all that, which is not what happened.
Well, is there an Ahmadi edition of the Bible that we don't know about, and that's why they're like reading like things into chapters that just aren't there?
I'm guessing someone who's important in his sect has used that argument about X. Lots of the other stuff I'm familiar with. In fact, lots of stuff that I heard from Nabil when I was having conversations with Nabil. I just thought it was Nabil, right? I just thought it was Nabil. Later on, I found out, oh no, this is standard Ahmadi stuff. But yeah, I mean, most of I never heard Nabil use that point from Acts 21, but most of their other arguments, exactly what Nabil said to me back in the day with the spices and Nicodemus and sign of Jonah and all that stuff. So
I found the thing funny that when I repeatedly asked him about Matthew 28,
Oh yeah.
and they wouldn't answer, and eventually Tahir answered it by saying it's just an idiomatic expression when it says that
Oh
Jesus
yeah,
has risen.
but he
has risen
specifically
from the
said
dead.
it's true. He said, no, it's true. It's completely true. So Cameron, I don't know if you saw that part, but IP asked him about the angel saying, he's not here. He has risen, just as he said. And it said he rose from the dead. And like, that's exactly correct. It's exactly correct. But it's an idiom. And they started talking about a near-death experience and stuff like that. Anyway, it's just... If Jesus repeatedly says he was going up to die, he means something else. If an angel says he rose from the dead, means something else. If all his apostles talk about him dying and rising from the dead, that the apostle Paul somehow corrupted the message and so on and so. It's a real lesson. It's a real lesson.
Very definition of ad hoc.
Yeah, it's a perfect example of, if you really want to believe something, you can twist everything you can somehow twist everything, especially if you're going to, nope, everything I disagree with isn't, again, using that method, I could go to the Quran and I could prove that Cameron is a prophet of God, using that method if I wanted to.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Got time.
Do it. All right, we'll take these first couple of super chats real quick, and then we'll jump.
What about that one thing though? What about the? It was totally not meant to be a major part of the debate, but when I brought up the idea that Jesus is the only human who is born with a mother and no father.
Oh yeah, and he said no. Adam was too. Wait, what?
That was ridiculous.
That was weird.
I started losing it there.
By the way,
maybe that's some foreshadowing with the video that we're gonna watch today.
That was actually a weird issue, because I'm like, did he just misspeak? Like he was just thinking, did he misspeak? Like he wasn't really thinking through it? Because that's common to say, oh, you say Jesus didn't have a father, but Adam didn't have a father. Did he just like misspeak and didn't think through it? Or is there some Ahmadi position that I didn't know about where Adam actually had a mom, and I don't know.
Seems to me like he made a mistake.
That's what I would guess, but it did make me wonder. D with an AP, excellent debate earlier. Thank you. Why can't I ever get it to $10 or an even number? God bless you both, IP and C2. Hey, your initial is C. That's your new nickname on here. No, CC. Nice. Capturing Christianity.
CC, yeah. Cameron. Or
welcome to CC. AP, are you aware that your theme music is being used in a Muslim youth network recruiting video? Tusi's TV vid, Islamists take control of Amsterdam, starting from 5 minutes and 43 seconds. That would be actually, you need to check that out, because that would be funny if they used your awesome theme music. I know you stole it, but you changed it.
No, someone named Jasoon Productions like blended it with like music I was already using to make like a remix. Yeah.
No,
I mean, AP originally got it from somewhere and then remixed it himself or something like that, right?
Like a remix of a remix.
That's what I thought.
Now.
What I actually did was I took an Islamic humming song, Nasheed, and remixed it and added my own beat to it. That's what I did. If you have seen it on a different video by Muslims without the beat, it's probably the original version being used. I am the one who took it and remixed it.
I'm going to go check that out, though, because that'd be awesome. Jose says, listen to every Mike Winger song, pretty please. There is no scenario where I would ever listen to a Mike Winger song. He's songs and the worst person in the world. How is the debate?
Was he like a worship leader or something at some point? That would not surprise me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's got his guitar in the background. Imagine someone being so nerdy that he has a guitar in his background.
Oh no.
How was the debate? I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, it went well. You guys clobbered them, and again, they just use the same debunked arguments over and over again. It's just
okay. Not the worst debate I've seen.
Pretty good stuff. And objection to Surah 4:157 is, it appeared so. No mention of Allah altering anyone to look like Jesus, and therefore isn't tricking anyone. Thoughts? You're correct as far as 4:157 does not explain that. That comes in commentaries and so on. But yeah, 4:157 is like very, very ambiguous, especially when you read it in context. If you just read that by itself, they killed him not nor crucified him. It really, 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 really sounds like 99% sure this is talking about Jesus not dying and not being crucified. When you kind of read it in context and combine it with certain other ideas, there are ways around this. But you are correct in that 4:157 doesn't talk about disguise. It says it was made to appear to them. but Muslims aren't clear on what was made to appear to them. So, and this came up when I was having a discussion with Khalil. We know what the dominant interpretation became eventually. It's just, if you believe that was the original meaning, then it's clear that Muhammad was getting this from like the Gnostics and Docetists and so on. So as a Muslim, you should probably favor the idea that an interpretation that was influenced by Gnostics and Docetists became standard later, but not what the Quran actually meant, because you can't have Muhammad copying those sources and so on. Anyone else have any thought on that, or is that good?
No.
All right. Apostate of Allah. When is AP going to debate a Muslim on the resurrection of Christ? That would be funny. AP humiliates Muslim on the resurrection of Christ. That would be
He'd
awesome.
probably do a good job.
He would. He'd probably do a bang up job. When are we having a Christian coming out party for AP? That's a good question. Good question.
Alhamdulillah.
It'd be funny if AP like does more and more debates defending Christian view. AP preaching. Look at this. It's funny. AP preaching the gospel today. Great message, sir. Yeah, AP's like, you don't understand the hypostatic union. Let me humiliate you.
That was hilarious. I love that.
Caleb says, I see that Cam often goes contemporary, modern, scholarly views. Keep in mind they will only accept classical ulama like Tafsir, Ibn Kathir, Qurtubi, Tabari, and so on. How do you respond to that?
I don't really know how to respond to that. I know that there's different things that Muslims are going to find convincing, and so you've got to like. One person was pointing out in my comments that Muhammad Hijab was pointing out how I think he did like a poll on his X, and the poll was like, what causes you the most trouble, and I think it was objections to like Muhammad's character, right?
Yeah,
and so like
that
if we're
was
really
number one.
Yeah, so if we're like really concerned about like what's going to be most convincing, like we shouldn't even be making these videos in the first place. We should just be focused on, character,
Child marriage,
objections, questions. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas, my view is, and I'm guessing this is yours, Cameron. There are lots of different kinds of Muslims in the world, and it's good to have a variety of approaches because there are a variety of different kinds of Muslims who are going to be impacted by those approaches. The same thing I had to deal with a long time ago when people thought my approach was too mean and aggressive. And there were people who say, I just preach the gospel. And it's like, I've never criticized you if you say you just want to preach the gospel. And I've never said that. Why? Because there are Muslims who just need to hear the gospel. Right?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I was thinking when I was making this video, like it's going to appeal to a certain group of Muslims, and it might just be a minority of Muslims that are going to like really take to heart what I'm about to say here. But for the people that actually will listen and take it to heart, I think that it's going to be really impactful for them. Hopefully, that's obviously the goal with a video like this. But we'll see how it plays out. Because I mean, like I said, I did draw on the views of Khalil Andani, and he's a PhD from Harvard and everything. So like the guy is fairly respectable in the scholarly community. And so if he's wrong about this, it's a big deal.
And you can't ignore the fact that he went against the guy Muslims would view as, it's hard because he's kind of new and I'm not impressed by Jake, but there are lots of Muslims who go to him on issues of theology and stuff like that. So they respect it. They respect him. And I thought Khalil just massacred him. So Muslims should be watching that. Wait a minute. Why did this?
Well, yeah, Khalil, I mean, he pointed out some really interesting things to me in personal correspondence. I hope he's okay with me saying this, but he was like, Jake, he converts, he was a Christian, right? At least is my understanding about his story. He was a Christian, then he became Muslim. And he was like, he went to like the most ridiculous denomination within Islam instead of
he said that
because he says that he's like this philosophical minded person, and then he went for like the least plausible
like the least philosophical.
Yeah.
Khalil said that in his debate with Jake. Like he brought that up as an actual issue. But yeah, so don't worry. But back to the character of Muhammad. I mean, Cameron, whenever if you can find me a big Muslim channel to debate, which is better for humanity, Christianity, or Islam, I am down. because I have so much data I want to use.
Well, look,
to
we're
show
trying to
this
get
problem.
we're trying to get Hijab back on.
Yeah.
He said reach back out at the beginning of the year.
I guarantee you ahead of time he would never defend Muhammad in a debate like that.
Yeah,
he's been pretty cordial with me. I don't know if he
that may be true, but at the end of the day, the direction that the Dawa guys want to go in, almost all of them just want to attack the Trinity all day. So matter of fact, that's the only reason he agreed to do that on his channel was he got to blast the Trinity. Defending Muhammad, they don't want to. Which isn't that weird, by the way? Like, guys, if you can defend Muhammad and show that he's a prophet, you win. You win.
Yeah.
It's done.
Yeah.
It's done.
Yeah.
And they won't touch it because it's almost like they don't think they can actually defend Muhammad. Isn't that weird?
I think rhetorically they understand that rhetorically it's like a lose situation for them. Like they're not. It's so easy to just get a leg up on the rhetorical side of things there, like you did. I mean, IP in your debate with Daniel Hikikachu, man, I was there for that, and I remember just like cringing in the back. I was like, oh my God, this is horrible, and I feel like they realize that that's probably going to happen more often if they start to do that.
Yeah, it's a rough situation in that you had the older generation of Muslim debaters, and they understood, hey, as long as we never debate Muhammad, then people in the audience won't hear about all these problems. And then eventually got to where people were hearing about it online. So you had some young Muslims who think, oh, we can defend this stuff, we can defend child marriage and so on. Then all the audience are going, whoa, they actually do teach that stuff. And then so these guys get the backlash. What are you doing? You're helping them. And then so they dial it back and they don't want to defend it, but there's kind of nothing you can do about it. Now all this stuff is coming out. And so at some point they're going to have to, some guys are going to have to rise up to who can defend this stuff, but it's not going to be pretty. There's no winning situation for them. If they ignore it, it looks like they're ignoring it. And if they address it, then they have to admit things and it's just bad. Question for AP. Does Christianity sound insane to someone who doesn't believe in God? Why or why not? Asking as a Christian who finally made it to alive. AP, you've been asked, does Christianity sound insane?
No.
Your face?
Well, there is the official answer which I can give here, and then there is also the other answer which I can give you if you contact me privately, of course.
I'm a secret Christian.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, it's all about believing in the supernatural, believing in God, believing in something more, in something further.
Can I ask a question, AP?
I don't think that there is anything insane about it. It is simply a normal religious a set of religious beliefs, and there you can have a discussion on the different claims within it and so on, and how it is internally consistent and all that. But I don't think there is anything that makes it insane.
Can I ask a question? So you say you're agnostic, right? Is that I guess two questions. First question is that with respect to the existence of God? Or is that with respect to like a particular religion?
It's with respect to whether I believe or not.
In
and
God.
With respect to whether I want to say publicly that I'm actually a Christian or not. No, it's it's about
cut that.
No, it's about I would say it's pretty much about the existence of God, but but while it is essentially about that, it is also about whether there is anything else and whether there is a greater meaning or not, and so on. But yeah, it's pretty much about theism.
Okay, so then the other question would be, when it comes to agnosticism, are you kind of like, well, there's no evidence either way, so I'm just in the middle, or are you more like there's evidence on both sides and I'm choosing the middle, and it sort of balances out, and that's why I'm in the middle?
At this point, right now, I feel like honestly, I want to believe, and I wish I did believe, and I leave everything open because I spent many years listening and also reinforcing and thinking and believing the idea that there is absolutely no God, and it's totally disproven, and it's not provable, therefore it's false, and so on. I have kind of abandoned that path and come to a spot where I now think the whole question is very difficult for me to answer, and I can no longer hold on to this idea that it's absolutely wrong and of course ridiculous and all that. That would be an arrogant position to hold for me. And at this point, I simply do not know whether the answer is yes or no.
Okay. Man, I want to probe that further, but let's move on.
Hey, you guys should do a show. Hey, there should be a series.
That would be
of shows.
fun.
There should be a series of shows like one after the other on different channels of trying to convince AP, and it's like he goes on your channel and you give him your best case, and then he.
I feel like I could convert him in an episode. I think I could.
You heard it. That would be a good show. People would watch.
Just to the existence of God, not necessarily to.
I have to say one thing about me that I don't really like, and that I actually came to a little bit dislike and hate and kind of
about
consider
yourself.
Nuisance about myself is that I happen to be an extremely, I don't want to use the word cynical, but
indecisive.
happen to be very cynical, fickle, and incredibly skeptical about things. And like, for example, at certain points I really want to think, I don't really care if it's true or not, I just want to act as if and live accordingly, but my mind is constantly, but this, but that, and so on.
That's interesting because AP, you're kind of, hey, check this out, capturing AP. You could call it capturing AP. That's a good one. AP. So you're like that on all the big topics. I've like decided on the big topics, but I'm similar on all the like. You've seen it come up a million times. Like, David, what side are you on this issue or that issue? I'm like, I don't know. There are like 4 main interpretations there, and I kind of think this one's a little more probable than that one. But I normally don't feel like I need to pick a side on lots of issues. But it's similar in the sense that I'm thinking like there's all this stuff that can be known, and I know like one tiny little bit of it, and I don't think I can make a decision on that issue without really studying it, at least reading the major books on it, and therefore, And I'm dealing with other stuff, so I don't even have time to read those books. So I'm always just like, on most issues, I'm like, I don't know, you guys, the rest of you guys figure it out. Yeah, there is that similarity in the sense that like, I'm like, I don't know, and I don't want to actually like choose a side on certain issues because, well, if I haven't studied it thoroughly, then there's probably a good chance that I'll be wrong. Whereas if I don't, then, well, I haven't made a.
You know what the funny thing is? I have been doing this whole thing. Like I don't publicly say anything about it. I don't talk about it. I don't comment on it very much. But I have been like for the last half year or so, have been intensively studying the Bible and looking into different texts, different teachings by both Christian scholars and commentators and Jewish ones and so on. And I spent so many of my days nowadays just sitting there and studying one perspective from within Judaism, and then from within Christianity, conflicting ideas and conflicting claims, and then I am there thinking, okay, well, these guys are right about this, but those guys are right about that, and they're wrong about this one, and then I dive deeper into a topic that is purely about Christianity, and then I look into different Christian perspectives and debate with myself whether this one is correct or that one is correct, and how they contradict each other, and so on. And I've been spending so much time on this kind of stuff, and sometimes I wish I could just put all of that away and just adopt a point of view and adopt a belief and just go with it and be fine with it. The funny thing is that the urge in my head to just always ask another question and not be satisfied with it is what causes me to go into all of these different questions again and again, and at this point it's just very very difficult for me to commit to something, to find something. So I wish I could just reverse the entire process of losing faith sometimes.
Well, you at least got to commit to the existence of God, then you can figure out which religion is true later.
He's got a point. By the way, AP, when you're sitting there talking, there's a discussion in philosophy about it usually comes up in discussions about Pascal's wager and so on, in that is doxastic, it's called doxastic voluntarism, meaning you can decide what to believe, right? Like I can just say, you know what, I really like this, and therefore I'm deciding to believe. Apparently there are people who can do that, and you're saying, well, I'd really like to believe or want to believe or think it's good to believe and probably psychologically healthy to believe. I'm just not convinced by this. And
yeah, you can still commit though. You can still like attend church and do whatever else.
And that's the thing. That's what my position right now is that I know that there are other people, of course, who probably are atheists and who live their lives as they wish, and for them it works quite well. For me, in all honesty, I think living as an atheist and exploring life that way, or just non-religiously, I think has not been a very fulfilling and peaceful endeavor.
Yeah,
so I would prefer
I don't know
actually
how you're alive.
sticking to a worldview or sticking to something like Christianity, for example, that I think makes for a much better life.
That's true.
AP, are you ready to say the Lord's Prayer?
But in all honesty, I'm a little bit afraid of my own mind sometimes. That's why.
Yeah, lots of
Because
people
I don't want to jump into something and then a few months later feel like, what am I doing here? You know?
And that could be a partial result of thinking you're right about Islam, then leaving Islam, then becoming an atheist, a rabid, donkey-brained atheist, and then not being sure about that and stuff. And it's like, I don't want to keep like.
Yeah.
By the way, because that's a similar reaction in that along the way, I did adopt specific positions on lots of things. And then like 2 years later, I'd change my mind and I'd adopt a different view and stuff like that. And eventually I was like, okay, I'm not just changing my mind and stuff like that until I really, really, really study this. But there's no scenario where I'm really, really, really going to study this. So I'm not setting a position in stone in my mind on certain
I never
issues.
thought of studying it, but I get what you mean. Pretty much agree with you.
All right, we'll take a couple more. We got a bunch more super chats, but we'll go ahead and jump into this video. Why are you grinning, you sicko? Caleb says, why do some da'is act like Ibn Taymiyyah is fully infallible? They almost treat him like he is a prophet, the way they obsess over him. Yeah, Caleb, that's in every area. That there are all these decisions that were made by later Muslims, and they'll treat them as like set in stone. So, I mean, a good example is the Quran. Like the Caliph Uthman burns all these other Qurans and issues an authoritative version. Muslims take that version as like indisputably the only one. Who is he? On what planet does he have that authority to decide, hey, we're getting rid of a bunch of Qurans and I'm sticking to this one? And then later, another Muslim declares that there are seven different authorized kirat, right? Different versions of the Quran, and the others aren't. This guy just picked them. I mean, he picked them, right? Then later they expand that to 10, so as not to confuse Muslims in thinking that this is referring to the 7 ahruf. So they just expand it. Hey, 7 will be confusing. Let's make it 10. And they keep doing this over time. And you get down to Muslims who are like, yes, this is the way it is. And it's like, what you believe right now was decided by like hundreds of specific individual Muslims. And before that, there's all this disagreement. They're even fighting wars over stuff. And eventually, Muslim just decides, hey, this, and he becomes the dominant guy or something like that. You guys just roll with it. It's a very, very man-centered religion, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they do.
I appreciate you guys. I really hope more Muslims come to faith in Jesus. It's such a waste for so many Muslims to believe lies and not love Jesus and the truth. And that is something all 4 of us can agree with completely here.
Amen.
You Western guys are jealous that JC came to my country.
Yeah, he's from India. Yeah.
D-Wood and AP, love tuning in. IP, your content is very insightful. I enjoy apologetics, and I love learning about other perspectives defending our faith. Yep, good stuff.
Yeah, nothing nice about capturing Christianity, though. That was kind of
not a word.
Obviously.
Apparently, no one likes
CC.
CC. Ever thought of making sketches about Muhammad coming up with his revelations, such as breastfeeding adults, satanic verses, dinner conduct, hijab, and more? Already done some of that, but yeah. Hey, you should check out Islamicize Me. Urinating Broom says, deep dive. Got to do the deep dive. Mike Winger has a good song out. It's by Goat Hub. Goat Hub made a song that Mike Winger actually shared. That was funny. Wait, do you actually not like Mike Winger? No one likes Mike Winger, man. People who say they do are pretending. Why do you all keep having Capturing Christianity on? And this is what I wanted to get to before we jump into the video. There's more, but I wanted to get to at least this one. Why do you all keep having Capturing Christianity on? His whole channel is about trying to refute the Trinity. He's an openly a Unitarian heretic.
You see?
Why is that?
You want to explain yourself? You want to explain yourself?
Is this true, CC?
He must be referring to, I've had on Joshua Sijiwati and Bo Branson to defend monarchical Trinitarianism, which is
that's IP's view, isn't it? That's your view, isn't it? IP? Monarchical?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And some people think that it's like Unitarian. It's not. It's,
You're using too many words, CC.
So
is it true or not? Admit it.
So we've got 2 Unitarians here, 2 Unitarian heretics on this show.
Yeah. There was a Unitarian who like said I was a Unitarian because I'm a monarchical Trinitarian. I'm like, no, I'm not.
Wow.
He's like, they just make things up because like
monarchical Trinitarianism is really, really nice. It's really, really nice.
This is wild stuff because AP is the most orthodox guy on this channel right now.
Yeah.
Weird. Muslims don't accept parables that aren't clear, but whatever is clear is an idiom. They have absolutely no practice understanding on concept. This is actually a very important point, and like should probably spell it out in debates. The general rule is you don't sacrifice the clear for the sake of the unclear, right? You go to the clearest verses and let them guide your interpretation of ambiguous verses. What Muslims do with the Bible and what Ahmadis do, you can lay out all the clear verses. Jesus repeatedly saying he's going up to Jerusalem to die. The angel saying that he rose from the dead. All these passages, these are all very clear. So where do they go? Sign of Jonah. Which by itself, if you just ignore everything else, you could interpret that in multiple ways. You could interpret it as Jesus surviving and so on. What's the problem? Everything else in the entire book. And Jesus specifically calling the Islamic interpretation satanic, right? So notice that they'll ignore all the clearest passages and they'll go to ambiguous passages, put their own spin on the ambiguous passages, and then use those ambiguous passages and the interpretation they give them to ignore the clear passages. And that is bad exegesis. Bad exegesis.
That was so funny to me that they accused us of cherry picking and ignoring certain aspects, and then they keep ignoring the most evident, the most clear references, which we consistently mentioned from the very beginning to the very end.
I want to jump in the video. I'm just liking some of these upcoming comments real quick. We're almost through them. Let's zoom through. AP is afraid to accept God exists because he knows that monotheism entails Islam. Good point. There's, of course, no monotheism without Islam.
Right.
Superb point, and that probably is the actual reason. Why is Sam Shamoon so mad at IP? Seems like pot stirring, especially with all the outside attacks from Islam. Thank you all. I literally just said, guys, more. I don't even know what they're talking about. I don't know what.
Was he mad at me for now?
Yeah, I don't know. But
yeah, I mean,
guys, there's always going to be people mad at everyone else, and that's going to be amplified, sadly.
Well, last I heard is he did a stream on me. He was convinced that I was Catholic. Convinced. He was celebrating it, and I was like, I never said I was. So okay.
Okay, so Sam is apparently mad at IP for not being honest about his Catholicism. Imam listed many scholars, including George Bernard Shaw, who praised Muhammad as a great moral reformer and prophet. I'm confused. There's no confusion here, dude. There came a time when people in the West became self-loathing and, look at the age of colonialism, and they started praising all things that are not Western. They started praising Buddha and Muhammad and all these things very frequently without knowing about them. But yes, you can find tons of this, people praising all things Eastern. The only difference is Muslims are the ones who will spend all their time finding these quotes and say, you see, everyone acknowledges that Muhammad was great. And okay, let's actually look at what your sources say and defend him. Mm-hmm. Drake says, after months of watching your videos, I'm glad to see David without a buzz cut. Well, without the buzz cut, there would have been no awesome video where I cut my hair and exposed Muhammad. My first apologetics roadshow foursome. Yeah, I'm not used to this either. I didn't even know what was going to happen with the video with 4 of us on there. AP, have you heard about string theory or quantum fluctuations theory? Why are you going to ask him that there? We're trying to check out a video here. Yes, yeah, I will answer for him. He's heard of string theory. Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Join the tribe, AP. You get space laser privileges. It's pretty cool. One of us. One of us. Oh, that might be the. I think that's an invitation to become a Jew.
Jewish. Yeah.
Because they're the ones with the space lasers.
Yes. I have been. This is one of those things. Is also that there is one thing tempting about the whole Jewish aspect, which is the whole privilege of becoming part of a group that runs the world and also can control the weather and all of that. That is also one of those reasons why I'm still undecided. Yeah.
Interesting. Did Bart Ehrman change his view on Christology in the Synoptic Gospels? I keep hearing it online, but haven't heard anything from Ehrman. IP or CC? What?
Yeah, he.
I mean, I know he's changed over time, and that he eventually did say Jesus is presented as divine in a sense in all the Gospels. But
yeah, he does accept that John says Jesus is God. I think he still is not convinced the Synoptics say Jesus is God. Maybe, you see, I'm not sure because I hear different clips, and I think in one, I think I saw him say that maybe the Synoptics do present him as divine in some sense, but maybe not the God, whereas John puts him up on that pedestal. So that might be where he is, but then again, I'm not entirely sure, so don't quote me on that.
Indeed.
Quote him on this.
But yeah, if someone who's more familiar with the latest from Bart Ehrman, can let us know. But yeah, his views have changed over time. I think at first he only thought Jesus is divine and presented as divine in John, but then, if I recall correctly, he said he changed his view and that Jesus is presented as divine in a sense in the Synoptics, but not, like what IP just said.
How can you trust somebody who changes his mind?
Matthew 11:28-30. AP fights against the enemy of the Lord without the full armor of God, like Batman for Jesus, with no super Holy Spirit. Get baptized by the Holy Spirit and relax. It's a good passage, AP. That's a famous passage. That's come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, I will give you rest.
That's pretty good, but don't exaggerate.
You should read that every single day.
I will.
We're almost through.
AP is like Batman.
I mean, I think it's cool. Someone said I was like Batman. Imagine if Muhammad was actually a stand-up comedian of old, and the Quran and Hadith were part of his failed comedy routines. The Quran could be a pilot for a religion about nothing. That's a Seinfeld reference. It was supposedly a show about nothing.
That's fun.
Okay, I have a privilege of preaching to 20 to 30 Muslim young men at our church. I need wisdom. Would love to have a conversation with D. Wood and AP. Shane, send us a message. I don't know if you're on Twitter or whatever, but yeah, we'd be happy to share some thoughts with you. Sam Shimon just like stirring up. Why you're here stirring up drama, trying to get us to just complain about Sam this entire show. AP, if one day you decide to become a Christian, do you have a specific denomination or church you lean towards?
I don't want to say anything about this. I do, but I don't want to say anything about it.
I already know. Orthodox. Duh.
Duh.
Am I right?
I have actually my whole life sympathized more with Catholicism than with any other aspect
Look
of
at
Christianity.
Cameron.
And
See?
still kind of
Now
feel
I
that
really
way,
got to get you on my show.
but I don't know. But there is more nuance to this, but I just don't want to say anything about this.
Give him his privacy, people.
Yeah, quit asking, quit pestering him, people. Asking now because we have 4 Christians on stream. How does predestination in Christianity work, and what are its main differences versus that in Islam? That's a perfect example of what I was talking about with me. Just not choosing sides, but IP. What are your?
Yeah, I just had a stream. I just did a stream today with Ryan Mullins, and we talked about that in his new book. So if you want to go to my channel, watch the stream from today. We talked about that. I take the view of Mullinism, so I mean, we talk about that there. You could get some ideas.
Molinism. All right, guys, we got some more super chats, but let's go ahead and jump into this video before it gets too late. We will get to the rest of those here in a bit. And we have Cameron's. So anyone who tuned in late, Cameron came up with a new video. Very interesting watching Cameron start taking a bigger interest in making videos about Islam and Islamic topics, hosting debates, all that stuff. But we have his latest video. I have not seen this. Have you seen this, AP?
No.
I mean, I've seen it.
Okay, so we are getting a new argument, which may be the worst argument we've ever seen in our entire lives. or maybe the best argument we've ever seen. Only one way to find out. Let's check it out.
So I've been studying Islam for a few months now, and I came across a verse that...
A few months? That's it?
No joke, that's it. By itself refutes Islam. And before you click away from this video thinking that this is just going to be like another low-level polemical video against Islam, think again.
What do you mean another? Like what? That's what the rest of us make and you're different?
Hey, dude, appealing to the Muslims that think that, because I've had comments, you know, from them claiming as much. So,
hey, that would have been funny. Before you think this is another low-level video criticizing Islam, like something you might see on the Apostate Prophets channel, let me tell you, this is way better than that garbage. That would be funny. That's how you should do it. You should do that one day.
That would have been good.
You should do that one. You should do that one day. That'd be awesome.
Again, this verse that we'll be looking at today has very serious issues at the scholarly level. That's the level that we'll be looking at today. So if you're ready for that, buckle up. And if you're a Muslim, I want you to watch this entire video. Before we get to the verse, let me back up a second and just tell you a little bit of the background. So I was originally looking for verses in the Quran that discuss the Trinity, just to like kind of see what it says. I'm a Trinitarian. Does it refute my beliefs? That's when I came across Surah 5.
Why'd you just call yourself a Trinitarian?
Yeah, aren't you a Unitarian heretic? We heard the super chat.
True.
Explain yourself.
Explain yourself, liar.
I am found see what it says. I'm a Trinitarian. Does it refute my beliefs? That's when I came across Surah 5. Surah 573 says, they disbelieve those who say God is the third of three, but there is no deity except the one God. If they do not refrain from what they say, a painful torment will befall those among them who disbelieve.
Hey, little side note. How many Christians do you know who say God is the third of three?
All of them. Every single one of them.
I wake up and I go, God is the third of three. We all go to church and we all say, God is the third of three. God is the third of three. We sing songs, and God is the third of three. Oh, yeah.
I
bet Mike has a song about that. Actually,
I spent a week in Jerusalem, in Israel with David. Most of the time, it was like rooms next to each other. One day, I had to wake him up. I knocked on the door, and I walked in there eventually, and he was sitting there on his knees saying, "God is the third of three."
God is the third of three.
What's interesting here? What's interesting with this verse, and I don't think I talk about this in the video, is that there's, I think if you go to Quran.com, it translates it differently. It says God is one in a Trinity. And so I went to this translation that says, because this is more of a literal translation, God is the third of three. It doesn't even say that God is one of three. It says God is the third of three. And so that's one of the reasons why I focused on that. At least in this video.
And I have to say, this isn't quite as severe as the massive blunder in Surah 9 verse 30, where it says that Jews say Ezra is the son of Allah. I
talk about that later in the video.
Oh, okay, yeah. So it's another one of those. It's another one of those things where, hey, why is Allah, who has all eternity to plan out exactly what he's going to say to refute all these positions, why does he say a thing where no one has any clue what he's talking about? And his apologists are forced to come in and say, well, maybe there was this tiny little sect that said that, and we have no record of them existing or something like that. It's like, well, why is he responding to them and not mainstream Christianity? Anyway, that's good.
So right off the bat, this verse seems to get the Trinity like wrong. Like it seems to be critiquing something like tritheism. So basically like polytheism.
Partialism.
It's not actually attacking the Trinity. Look back at the verse here. It says that the disbelievers say Allah is the third of three. Third of three what? The next sentence tells us there is no God except one God. So then the verse is saying that Allah is not the third of three gods, which is a rejection of tritheism. Okay, so this verse isn't actually attacking the Trinity, it's attacking a straw man. Okay, but I want to be as charitable as possible. Let's just give this verse the benefit of the doubt.
Little side note on that. When I talk about the Quran attempting to respond to the Trinity, I get messages from actual, like, there are scholars who explore the origins of where this stuff is coming from, and they say it goes back to the Syriac this and that, and they say the sources that Islam is actually drawing on were responding to tritheism, and Muhammad didn't understand the difference and thought that people are tritheists. So there's the idea that all these things are based on earlier sources and so on, and that Muhammad's hearing them and he's having them put down. and claiming them as revelations. Whereas for me, I'm just like, well, I can understand why Muhammad would come to that conclusion. It makes sense to think that Muhammad is going around and he hears Christians talking about the Father, and they hear Christians talking about the Son, and they hear Christians talking about Mary, the Mother, and then Christians talking about the Trinity, and thinking, oh, that's what the Trinity is. It's Father, Mother, and Son. I understand Muhammad making that huge mistake. I don't understand God making that mistake, and so it's pretty weird. But let me back up
for context, by the way, is literally in Arabic the verse says Allah is the third of three, but is also understood as one of three. So there are three gods, and Allah is one of them, which is a straw man.
You're a straw man.
Yeah.
Okay, so this verse isn't actually attacking the Trinity, it's attacking a straw man. Okay, but I want to be as charitable as possible. Let's just give this verse the benefit of the doubt. And also, some scholars argue that this verse isn't even attacking a specific model of the Trinity. It's just trying to like target the view generally. Now, personally, I find that view kind of implausible, but again, let's just give them the benefit of the doubt here that this verse isn't straw manning the Trinity. Good. Let's go ahead and keep reading. Verse 74, will they not repent to God and ask his forgiveness? God is forgiving and merciful. And then we get to verse 75, which is what this video is about. The Messiah, son of Mary, was only a messenger, before whom other messengers had passed away, and his mother was a woman of truth. They both used to eat food. Note how we make clear the revelations to them, then note how diluted they are. The part of verse 75 that's so problematic, to the point that I'm convinced it actually refutes Islam, is the part where it says they both ate food. The next line makes it clear that this is intended as some kind of like argument against a particular view held among Christians during the time of Muhammad. That's what the rest of this video will be focused on. I'm going to give 3 possible interpretations of this verse, then go through and show how each possibility has damning consequences for Islam. And again, I'll be appealing to contemporary scholarship to make my case.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, you're saying that there are 3 possible interpretations of what that means, and that
of what it's responding to, what belief that Christians held that they both ate food is supposed to respond to, supposed to refute, supposed to demolish.
And your claim was if none of that works, then calls into question the divine authority of the Quran.
Well, you gotta have some sort of interpretation of what that's responding to. Because it like the next line makes it pretty clear that it's talking about, it's sort of giving an argument there against some view. And what is that view? That's what the video is about.
I find the whole the slight subtlety of presenting it, that it's giving some kind of argument.
I'm trying to be nice. So as I say, the line, they both ate food, is supposed to refute something, right? The next line sort of triumphantly states that this makes something clear. But the question is, what? What is it refuting? What is so clear after we understand that Jesus and Mary ate food? As I say, there are really only 3 options that exist in the literature. Before we get to the options, we should note that this...
Wait, you've been examining Islam for, you said, like 5 seconds, and you're already like, and I will tell you about all the literature.
Well, the literature on this verse, not too deep. Food. As I say, there are really only 3 options that exist in the literature. Before we get to the options, we should note that this verse kind of puts Jesus and Mary side by side, almost as if they're like equally involved in the same theological issue. So the verse basically wants to point out something it thinks that both of them, Jesus and Mary, have in common. And the fact that the same argument is used against both Jesus and Mary, they both ate food, implies an equation between the two, which is kind of strange to begin with in the first place. But in any case, if the Quran is critiquing Christian beliefs, it seems to be saying that whatever theological error applies to Jesus also applies to Mary. So let's take a look at the interpretive options before us. I'll also quickly note that I won't really be arguing which interpretation is correct, because they all face extremely serious problems. All right, option 1, Jesus and Mary are both members of the Trinity. That's option 1. Option 2. Did you pause it?
I did pause it. I was trying to remember which, because I mean, I took logic over. I mean, I took multiple logic classes, but it was over 20 years ago. But I forget what this I would have to look it up. I forget what this logical form is, because there's one that's it's basically it goes A or B.
Disjunction.
This is three. I'm trying to think as far as so it would be A or B or C. Basically, not A, not B, not C. Something along those lines, right?
Hmm.
You know what I mean? What I'm trying to think.
I give a syllogism later on that makes it clear. So
okay, I'm trying to figure out how
it's
that
at the
would
very
be
end.
with three. All right, let's go.
Jesus and Mary are equally divine.
Wait.
Option 3: Jesus and Mary are both incorruptible.
So, you're saying these are the possibilities as to what this verse is responding to.
Yes, they both ate food. It's supposed to be refuting these views.
Some position.
Yes.
So it could be, as most Muslims think, this is responding to at least the third of three part earlier, but that's the same context. Right. Jesus and Mary are both members of the Trinity, or Jesus and Mary are equally divine, or Jesus and Mary are both incorruptible. And so you're pointing out
that third one, I spend most of the video talking about that one. That's the one that Khalil was the springboard for.
Okay, so
because I asked him on X, hey, how do you interpret this passage? And so he sent me down this rabbit hole of this third option, this third interpretation.
Okay,
so that's what I looked into.
And you have not accepted his interpretation.
Oh no. So okay, like I said in the video, I didn't really argue which interpretation is correct, but if you want to, I can give you my thoughts on that here with the four of us. But it's up to you guys if you want to do that or not. I've got 7 reasons why I think actually that option 1 is the correct interpretation.
That seems to be the simplest.
I mean, it fits with other stuff, and if you don't think that it's responding to the Trinity, then it's like nothing in the Quran is actually responding to the Trinity. It would all be, everything that Muslims typically interpret as responding to the Trinity would actually be responding to tritheism.
But what I do want to point out though is that this third option it's not just Khalil. There was another scholar, I can't remember who I reached out to. So Khalil relied on a source that I mentioned a little bit later in the video, and that scholar obviously purports this offers this view as well. But there was another scholar that I messaged on X, and he referred me to Khalil's view. And so this seems to be a very popular view in the scholarly community, that Jesus and Mary are both incorruptible. That's the view that this is supposed to be targeting or refuting. And so that's why I spent time looking into this. I even emailed the scholar of this book. So that's in this video as well.
The thing is that I would say that on the surface, looking at it, considering the historical context of it, it seems that whoever came up with this idea, it might be Muhammad with his ignorant observations, was that
now you're just getting polemical, AP. You can't do that.
And frankly, racist.
Thank you. So he saw that Christians are worship. Christians engage in worship, and they consider Jesus the Son of God, and they consider Jesus divine, and they believe in the Trinity. And it says, "Do not say three. Do not say three." So it's quite obvious. It's the Father, and then it is Jesus. Who is the other one? He doesn't understand it, and he sees them.
The mother.
He sees them.
He is the Father, the Mother, and the Son. That's how it makes sense.
He sees this great veneration for Mary. So what he thinks is, why are they worshiping a woman? It's a mother. So Father, Mother, and Son, and then the idea then would be
a nice little Trinitarian family.
This is the Trinity: the Father, the Son, and the Mother.
Mm-hmm.
If you've never heard that term before, it just means immune to bodily decay. But I'll be breaking that down a little bit further as we get to that section in just a couple minutes, so stay tuned. So my contention is that all 3 options crash and burn under 2 major issues. A, there's simply no historical evidence that Christians actually held these beliefs. And then B, the statement they ate food does absolutely nothing to refute the view itself, even if some unknown heretical Christian group held it. All right, now let's look at each option more in depth. Let's start with option 1, the idea that Jesus and Mary are equally members of the Trinity. Remember the earlier verse, the one that rejects the idea that Allah is the third of three? Well, on this interpretation, Christians believed that the Trinity is the Father, the Mother, and the Son. Right from the outset, though, we get our first major issue. There is zero historical evidence that any Christians actually believed this. Not a single credible source, not one. Early church councils, writings of the church fathers, Christian creeds, all of them affirm the Trinity as the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Mary was revered, yes, obviously, but never as like a divine co-member of the Godhead. If Surah 575 is supposed to refute this idea, it's aiming at a belief that simply did not exist. The Quran here would basically be setting up a straw man, addressing a doctrine that was never part of Christian teaching, or maybe the author just didn't really intend to set up a straw man, but simply misunderstood the Christian belief in the Trinity. That's a possibility.
Hey, yo, that might be a fun video. All the straw men in the Quran. Because there's a lot of them. There's a lot of, here's what you believe. And like, no one believes that, ever. No one has ever believed that.
Are you saying that Jews don't believe that Ezra is the son of Allah?
Allah is the king of all strong.
I was actually
builders.
messaging a Jewish philosopher about that, and I told him he didn't even know that was in the Quran. He was like,
Hey, AP.
like,
Hey,
I'm pretty sure no one's ever believed that.
Hey, AP, when Allah wants to build another straw man, he just says be, and it is.
That's
We get to problem B.
What's that?
He builds the straw man with his two right arms, right? So he's got like an advantage to.
He made this straw man with his own two hands.
There is one thing. There is one claim that some people make, which is that there was a sect called the Collyridians in Arabia that supposedly believed that Mary was divine, and they worshipped Mary and they gave sacrifices and offerings to Mary and all that. The bad thing is that there is only very little. I was trying to check if it's in here against heresies. I think it's not. It's in some other book. But
acting like you got books. I don't even see a shelf. Go ahead.
I think that
AP searching Google, pretending he's searching his mysterious unseen bookshelf. Okay.
I think that while there are some early mentions about some such sect, most of what has been argued about those, such as that they may have believed that Mary is part of the Trinity, are based on the fact that the Quran makes this claim, so that researchers then say it could be referring to these Collyridians who may have had such beliefs, although we don't have any further evidence for that. So the only explanation that people have for some fringe sect somewhere also relies on the Quran here. There is simply no other possible evidence of any other group that worships Mary aside from the others.
And it would be the same thing. It's the same thing with like Ezra. Like you could speculate and say there was some group and there was some mysterious group of Jews, or maybe it was just a Jew. Like I think it was Shabir Ali who said that. Like, well, it could have just been one. It's like,
yeah,
okay, Allah had this from all eternity, right? He's seeing all eternity before him, and he decides what to respond to. Why does he respond to the stuff that no one's ever heard of, and we can't even verify that it existed?
What's interesting is like later in Surah 5, like Jesus asks Allah to send down food again. So it alludes back to this whole food issue, and then
that's what the chapter means. Yeah. It means a table. It's because it's about this miracle of Allah providing.
And then in verse 116, it brings up the Trinity again. It's like, did Jesus ever teach to take Mary and yourself besides Allah? And he will say no. So I don't see how this cannot be about the Trinity, because it comes back to it even later in the surah, brings up the food issue again, brings up this whole issue where Jesus and Mary gods alongside Allah. Like, how could this not be about the Trinity?
Yeah, one thing that made me think, well, maybe it's not. It could be about something else. And again, I've got 7 reasons I think it actually is about the Trinity. But you can't give the Quran too much credit, because it pops around on different topics all the time, right? So
Yeah, so easy to understand, ladies and gentlemen.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, I could talk about one thing here, and then
clear.
2 verses later. Yeah, I mean that's what Khalil's interpretation is that it's talking about the Trinity in 573, and then incorruptibility in 575. So
Interesting.
his logic is completely flawed here. The argument they both ate food is meant to refute there being part of the Trinity, but how exactly does that work? Like, Christians have always taught that Jesus, as fully God, chose to take on human flesh and live as a man. This included him being able to eat, to sleep, and experience human needs. There is absolutely nothing inconsistent about a divine being who contingently takes on a human body. Indeed, if one thinks that God is omnipotent, then one must admit that he can assume a body and act through it if he wants to. And in fact, that's just what God did, according to Christians. Christians believe that Jesus pre-existed the incarnation and contingently assumed a human body like ours. Christians have consistently emphasized this aspect of Jesus' humanity. So in short, eating food does not rule out divinity at all. So if we go with option 1, we're left with a double failure here. A, no Christians actually historically believed Mary was a co-member of the Trinity. And then B, they ate food doesn't disprove divinity or a contingent incarnation in any way. All right, let's now move to option 2 and see if it fares any better. So option 2 is the idea that Jesus and Mary are equally divine. This interpretation would mean that Christians supposedly believed that Mary was divine, just like Jesus, though not necessarily as a formal member of the Trinity. But here's the obvious problem with this one. You're going to start to see a pattern here. There's simply no evidence, historical or otherwise, that any Christians held this view. No one in Christian history, from the earliest councils to the modern day, actually held that Mary possessed divinity on par with Jesus. The Quran, if it's targeting this view, is again targeting a straw man. Moreover, we also have a counting problem here, because the Quran says Christians believe that Allah is the third of 3. Remember in 573. If the author of the Quran didn't think Mary was a member of the Trinity, but then said Christians say that she's divine, like a god, then Allah would have to be the third of 4. Father, Son, Holy Ghost, the Trinity, and then Mary. We then have to say that the author of the Quran actually counted incorrectly. But now on to problem B, as we've already discussed. They ate food doesn't work as a refutation of divinity. In option 1, we established that divine beings can contingently take on a human body by choice. Therefore, they ate food establishes nothing. So
as far as the Quran here is attempting to respond to something, you give multiple options of what the Quran could be responding to based on what the verse is actually saying. One of the interpretations is, the second interpretation is that the Quran thinks that Christians believe that they are both divine, and therefore that eating food would be a refutation of that.
Yes, so, or eating food would prove that they're just human, they're not divine.
Yeah, so you're pointing out that 1, no Christians think of Mary as divine in that way, and 2, Mary eating food,
eating food doesn't disprove divinity, yeah.
Has anyone, I know you have, let me put it this way. There are some Gnostics and Docetists who didn't believe that Jesus was actually human, right? It was just like they said he didn't leave footprints when he walked and so on like that. So they're trying to deny his actual humanity, and apparently that was pretty early on, because that occurs in one of the letters of John, where, hey, if someone doesn't say Jesus came in the flesh, that's you got to test those spirits and stuff, see where this stuff is coming from. But there's none of that with Mary, right?
Right.
Has there ever been anyone who said that Mary was not a physical person?
No, not that we know of. I mean, that's what I didn't ask the scholar about that in particular. I asked him specifically about the theory that he offers with respect to Mary's body being incorruptible. So that's what I emailed him about. He said that there's basically no primary evidence for any belief among any Christian group, especially in Arabia. Talk about that in just a second. But as far to my knowledge, there is no source outlining a Christian belief about Mary being divine or purely spiritual or anything like that. Yeah.
There is a source.
No,
Book of Trust Me, Bro. It's Islam's favorite source,
reliable.
even greater than the Quran.
That's a very reliable one. Yeah.
That is.
What happened to IP?
Oh, I told him, I said, because I know he did a live stream earlier. I was like, hey, because you originally you originally said you wouldn't be on till later with us, and so I said, hey, why don't you jump on for a while, stuff like that. You can stay as long as you want and stuff. But
Gotcha.
yeah, I told him
So
he
he
could
just
jump on whenever.
left
Yeah,
without
didn't even say
anything?
bye. That's no. If you want to say he's rude, that's true. He's extremely rude,
Yeah.
possibly
Yeah,
a psychopath.
Option 2 fails in the same two ways. A, there's no historical basis for any belief in Mary as equally divine with Jesus. And B, they ate food doesn't work as an argument against divinity anyways. Now let's turn to option 3, where things are about to get a whole lot more interesting.
get real.
By now you might be thinking, like, surely the third option has to be better than the first two, right? Like, after all, the first two interpretations fail on multiple levels. This final interpretations.
Oh, just so everyone knows, Mike messaged me. He said he's been having a jaw problem with pain in his jaw, so he has to jump off. So that was not just him being rude. He's saying he's getting lockjaw and stuff like that with the pain and stuff. So anyway,
Oh, man.
That's not an excuse.
yeah, it's not an excuse. You still got to say goodbye.
Well, the first two interpretations fail on multiple levels. This final interpretation suggests that Surah 575 targets a belief that both Jesus and Mary possessed incorruptible bodies during their time on earth, meaning that they were immune to any form of bodily decay. The Quran's argument they both ate food would thus imply that their bodies were like any other humans, naturally subject to decay. Sounds kind of interesting, right? Not so fast. So let's actually first break down what incorruptibility actually means. So in Christian terminology, incorruptibility means that a body avoids decay either fully or partially after death. Now, while Christians generally believe that Jesus was incorruptible post-resurrection, like his post-resurrection body was incorruptible, there were certain groups, like the Julianists, that took it a lot further. They suggested that Jesus' body was not just free from decay after the resurrection, but was also immune to it during his earthly life, a obviously controversial stance that also caused heated debates within Christianity. So to this group, to the Julianists, Jesus' incorruptible body was a sign of his divinity, a way of sort of preserving his holiness even while he was physically alive. But what about Mary? So historically, from a historical perspective, Christians did venerate Mary and they believed that her body was preserved after her death, yet they did not believe that her body was incorruptible while she was alive. For Byzantine Christians, the group of Christians that would have been around during the time of Muhammad, Mary was fully human during her earthly life, experiencing life's frailties as any other person would. It was only after her death, or at least they believed, that her body was shielded from decay. This belief upheld Mary's humanity while also honoring her special role as Jesus' mother. Unlike the Julianist views about Jesus, we have no evidence that anyone claimed Mary's earthly body was inherently free from decay. Now, here's the issue, okay? So if Christians at that time believed Mary's body was ordinary while she was alive, then the Quran's argument about they both ate food doesn't even touch on the genuine Christian doctrine. It's once again arguing against a straw man. But so how can we be so sure that there were no Christians at the time that believed in Mary's incorruptibility during her earthly life? Well, I actually consulted scholars on this very question. So Dr. Klaus von Stach, who is the co-author of Mary in the Quran.
You made that up, man. Dr.
What, the guy's name?
Dr. Klaus von Stotz. Come on. That's like when I go, Professor Uppenbach
Literally his name.
says.
That's literally his name. He co-authored it with Muna Tatari, Mary in the Quran.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Both middle names. Klaus von Stach.
There is a. You're right that in the beginnings, the whole idea that Jesus must be more than human, therefore his body cannot change, he cannot die, he cannot suffer, he cannot feel pain, and so on. These beliefs were beliefs that were going around simply because of the idea that Jesus is more than just human. We talked about this earlier
So-
during the debate, even because of Gnosticism and Docetism and other movements that were also influenced by this very idea, which is why they had to elevate Jesus, because to them, you have the one perspective, which is that Jesus, because of his divine nature, his body cannot decay. You had other perspectives, which were that Jesus doesn't have in any way anything earthly or anything human to him, because anything that is earthly is bad, and he cannot experience anything earthly. He is completely above that. No matter where you go to the Gnostic explanations, to earlier the regular Christian explanations, whatever it is, you have all kinds of ideas about Jesus. Why in the world would anyone say anything about Mary?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, Julianist. Actually, do you know? Well, try to guess where Julianism originated. Try to guess. What would the modern day country be?
I would say
First country that comes to mind.
Italy would be the first thing to come.
I don't know, man. I don't know. Turkey. Yeah.
Really? Why that?
Yeah. That's just where it happened. What's the name of it? The city is Korea.
Why is it called Julianism? I thought you were talking about Julian.
Yeah, no, it's Julian, but it originated in Korea, but it was in the Byzantine Empire. Which, if you look at a map of the Byzantine Empire, it's sort of stretched around the Mediterranean, but where like Mecca and Medina and stuff, like it's actually disconnected from the Byzantine Empire during the time of Muhammad. And Turkey is on like the north side of the Mediterranean Sea. So the belief, like there's actually no evidence that the Julianist beliefs said anything about Mary, but there's also no evidence that anything about Julianism actually reached Arabia, like the Christian, this heresy. So it's like doubly absurd to think that that's what this verse is responding to. Didn't really go over that in this video, but
something to think about. The emperor, who was it, Justinian, expelled the heretics, and a bunch of them went to Arabia. I have no clue if there's any possible connection, but that would be something.
According to Klaus von Stoch, there is zero primary evidence that this
According
belief,
to Dr. Trust Me, bro.
there's no primary evidence that Julianists held that belief about Mary, and then there's no evidence that those beliefs actually arrived in Arabia. So, according to this scholar, in Mary in the Quran, clarified in correspondence that no primary evidence exists to support the idea that Mary's body was considered incorruptible while she was alive. Even the Julianists, who were known for their radical views on incorruptibility, only applied this to Jesus. They didn't apply it to Mary. Now, some scholars have hypothesized that a small Christian group might have held this view about Mary just to basically reconcile Surah 575 with known history. But think about this for a second. Like, why would we invent an unattested belief to explain away an error in the Quran? Like, a much simpler explanation is just that the Quran simply misunderstood Christian beliefs.
It's
as
racist.
It does in other places, such as
Occam's razor.
This is where the video gets polemical right here. Anytime you mention a alternative hypothesis that doesn't include the Quran being the perfectly preserved direct speech from Allah.
Why would you
Can't do that? You're being polemical.
On the one hand, you have you arguing that if there is no proper evidence or no proper reason, it's probably not true. On the other hand, we have something that confirms what the powerful word of Allah said. Who are we supposed to believe, you or the powerful word of Allah?
Good point.
In your face.
See?
Is just that the Quran simply misunderstood Christian beliefs, as it does in other places, such as the claim in Surah 930 that Jews worshipped Ezra as the son of God. What? So once again, in option 3, the Quran is targeting a straw man. All right, now let's tackle problem B, because this is where the verse's logic truly unravels. The Quran's claim that they both ate food is supposed to be this like really powerful refutation of Jesus and Mary's incorruptibility. But here's the catch, okay? Eating food doesn't actually imply...
What do you say, AP?
What are you making fun of it? It's powerful.
I know. It's like the most racist thing I've ever seen in my life.
It's like it's the best argument for any position I've ever seen. Anything about a body's ability to decay. It's like trying to prove someone isn't invincible because they like eating pizza. Like, it just doesn't follow at all. Think about it this way, okay? Imagine you've got this like supercar that was designed with some sort of revolutionary anti-rust metal. Okay, no matter what the conditions are, rain, mud, salt on the roads, this car is never gonna corrode. All right, now let's say that the owner pops like a little bobblehead on the dashboard of their car. Okay, does this mean that the car's rust-proof body suddenly needs maintenance or something?
That is
Or like
James
could
Harden.
somehow be compromised?
Looks like it
by adding a little.
Wait, that's what?
James Harden, basketball
Who's-
player. James Harden.
He didn't have a mohawk.
He used to when he played
Oh,
on the
okay.
Rockets.
Okay. So you got the
Yeah,
classic.
that's old. That
He was
is
trying to
old
look
from,
like Mr. T. He was trying to look like
2017.
Mr. T back in the day, man. He probably grew up
Ah.
watching Mr. T like me.
I want to say one thing, which is that, of course, it's always nice to go into the depths of the argument and argue with it. On the in essence, all of this is just because Christians believe Jesus is divine, and the Quran doesn't get it. Muhammad doesn't get it because, well, if he's God, then why is he eating food? God doesn't need to eat food. Are you stupid? How dare you? So this is basically the whole thing. That there is no understanding at all. This basically goes back to earlier in the debate we talked about. Why is Jesus saying? Why is Jesus saying? Why have you forsaken me? Why is Jesus praying and so on? It's basically the same perspective. It's like there is only one perspective, which is God Almighty. God no needs. God no need food. Eat food. Why God eat food? So God, if God eat food, then not God. This is basically the whole idea. There is no understanding, no familiarity at all with Christian thinking, with early Christology. Centuries of Christology, centuries of firmly established explanations of the divine nature, the divinity, the human aspect, and so on. All of it is completely ignored, and with this ignorance and arrogance, the Quran comes in and says, "Oh, you are so stupid. If he's God, then why is he eating food?" That's all that this boils down to. It's incredibly stupid. That's what it
It's a powerful argument for,
I'm about to become an Ahmadi after this powerful argument.
of their car. Okay, does this mean that the car's rust-proof body suddenly needs maintenance or something? Or like could somehow be compromised by adding a little decoration? No, not at all. Like the owner's choice to put a bobblehead or even an air freshener in the car has nothing to do with its durability. It's literally only there because the owner wants it there. In the same way, if Jesus or Mary were actually incorruptible, like eating food wouldn't affect that state in the slightest. Christians believe that Jesus chose to experience life fully, like sharing meals with his followers as part of his earthly ministry.
By the way, this kind of came up earlier. This kind of came up in the debate as far as they were complaining about. Well, why did Jesus say that he would eat some fish? He had bodily needs and so on and so.
Doesn't prove that at all.
Yeah, he's showing them that he's not a ghost. But as far as the principle that a resurrected being would not eat, because keep in mind, a resurrected being in both Christianity and Islam would be incorruptible. But there are all kinds of passages in the Quran about eating and drinking in paradise after the resurrection. And so that would be a similar issue. If eating food is a response to incorruptibility, well, the resurrected Muslims are going to be eating food according to the Quran. They're also going to be spending eternity deflowering virgins, but that's a different story. Well, back it up a little bit. You're rude.
Christians believe that Jesus chose to experience life fully, like sharing meals with his followers as part of his earthly ministry. And the same could be true for Mary. It's easy to see actually why or how they might have joined meals for social or spiritual reasons rather than some biological need. Eating food is not a sign of corruption. It might just be like a sign of human connection. So if the Quran is trying to say that Jesus and Mary's bodies weren't incorruptible because they, quote, ate food, it's making a wonderfully terrible non sequitur.
So just to be clear, an incorruptible body can eat food. There's zero reason to think that an incorruptible body could not eat food.
Yes, all incorruptible means is that you're like free from decay. Which there's I think there's certain studies that are being done right now that are trying to like reverse aging, so to reverse like the natural process of decay. You know, are those people still going to be eating food?
Well, I have one objection to
know.
this, which is
Okay.
you might say that this is something that an incorruptible being could choose to eat food. However, if Muslims decide that this is not something that a divine being would do, then how are you supposed to argue against that? You can't. Both.
Powerful.
I guess, though, if they hold that position, then they'd have to defend that claim. If they view that as a refutation, they'd have to show how it's a refutation.
Muslims don't have to defend anything.
I'm saying, because Cameron could say the same thing. Prove to me that an incorruptible...
Yeah, I think he was just joking.
Of course he was, but some people, 30% of the people never know when AP is joking.
Wonderfully terrible non sequitur, a logical blunder, a misstep that doesn't actually address the belief
Pretty
in
rude
question.
language.
So in the end, despite scholarly attempts to make option 3 work, it collapses under the same two issues. A, we have no evidence that Christians actually held the belief in the first place, and B, they ate food doesn't logically conflict with incorruptibility. So we're left with a verse targeting beliefs that Christians never actually held and using an argument that doesn't even achieve its intended purpose. But so where does this leave us? Well, if Islam is true, then the Quran, claimed to be a perfect, divinely inspired revelation, would obviously not straw man Christian beliefs or endorse bad arguments.
Your syllogism.
It would represent opposing beliefs accurately and then refute them with clarity and truth. But what do we see in Surah 575? Well, we see a verse that completely misrepresents Christian doctrines and then tries to dismiss them with an argument that fails pretty spectacularly. Like, it's embarrassing how bad this argument actually is. The Quran, instead of presenting a clear and compelling case against Christianity...
This is pretty mean rhetoric, Cameron.
I know, this is pretty...
Like,
this is stuff that I wouldn't even say.
It was bad.
Yeah, like, I mean, I have an excuse. I'm a psychopath. What's your excuse? Just being as fun. Back
Just gotta call it like I see it.
This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. I wonder how anyone with a functioning brain or an IQ over 4 would think that this is a good argument.
Are you stupid?
Are you stupid?
I keep
my only question.
hearing that you gotta be over the top if you want to convince Muslims.
You are correct. So you win that one.
Yeah. Like, it's embarrassing how bad this argument actually is. The Quran, instead of presenting a clear and compelling case against Christianity, builds an argument on a foundation of misunderstandings. If this text truly came from the omniscient creator, there would be no room for any such errors. Now, if it's still not obvious how this verse leads to the falsity of Islam, I've put the reasoning into an easy-to-understand argument. Premise 1. If Islam is true, the Quran wouldn't strawman Christian beliefs or endorse bad arguments. Premise 2. The Quran does both in Surah 575. Conclusion, therefore, Islam is not true. So, to the Muslims that are still watching this video, which premise in my argument is false? The logic in it is actually airtight. If you can't tell me which premise is false, then you have to accept the conclusion. Islam is not true. But you know what is true? Christianity. There you go, AP.
That's pretty Islamophobic and racist. I love it.
Guys, so you can see Cameron's argument here, which, by the way, you can apply to...
Yeah, you can screenshot it too. Screenshot this and send it to that person who was asking earlier, like what to say to those 20 Muslim students or whatever. Just show them the screenshot of this argument. Let them...
I'm saying that you could use this same pattern over and over again. with keeping the same first premise. Like you could use this with Ezra, right? You could use this with Ezra and other passages. If Islam is true, the Quran wouldn't strawman Jewish beliefs or endorse bad arguments and so on. Yep, and the Quran does both in 575. What are you about to say, AP?
You could make it very simple and use any wording here and say that even according to the Quran itself, if it was from any other than Allah, you would find within it mistakes or contradictions. Even according to the Quran itself, if there is a mistake in the Quran or misinformation in the Quran, then it is not from Allah, and therefore Islam is not true. There is a mistake in the Quran here, therefore it's not from Allah. Islam is false. Alhamdulillah.
Powerful
stuff.
You could also formulate that as either the Quran is from Allah or Muhammad. No, because I guess you could say it's from other people. But you could give the various anyway. The only option that makes sense is that it's from someone who could make a mistake, like Muhammad or something like that. I'm trying to.
I mean,
what's popping into my head while you're saying that Allah wouldn't do this is Allah's the best of deceivers. So why couldn't he lie about a person's position?
Well, he's not a very good deceiver. If this is his claim to being a good deceiver. Yeah.
Oh, hey, that would be a good one. Is Allah really the best of deceivers when his arguments are like so easy to refute and destroy?
See,
I love the. Go ahead.
Hang on, I'm thinking about how to formulate this. If the Quran is true, then Allah is the best of deceivers. Allah is not the best of deceivers, therefore the Quran is not true. And argue that his arguments are so lame that an even better deceiver would not put out such horrible arguments.
Maybe I can just kind of address the audience a little bit. So like if you're still watching this and you're like, you're thinking about this verse, I want you to really just read the verse for yourself and then try to come up with like, if you think that my three possible interpretations are not the only possible ones and you want to come up with others, try to do that. And then ask yourself, is this argument that they both ate food, is that a good refutation of that position, first of all? And then are there any Christians that actually held that? And I think that if you do that, you're going to wind up in the same position that I found myself in. And so I just wanted to encourage the audience to try it for yourself.
And guys, the takeaway as far as people who are going to be having discussions, because guys, one way to do things is to share the video, right? Share the video. And whether you're on Twitter or YouTube or whatever, good idea to share the video. But at the end of the day, it's even more important to kind of learn the argument and to use it, right? So
which is not that difficult. I mean, this one to me is a fairly straightforward argument to learn. You just got to learn the options.
And you don't, if you're in a conversation or a discussion or a back and forth, you don't even have to present the argument in, as you've presented it. You can be familiar with it, and you can ask the Muslim, right? Hey, what is your interpretation of this verse? What is this responding to? And whatever he goes with, then you just give the response. So anyway, the point is,
which Christian group held that, and then if how is that actually a refutation of that view in the first place?
And that's something you don't even have to do as like a gotcha or something like that. You can be having discussion. Hey, why don't you look into this? Why don't you go look into this and try and figure out what they're responding to here? Why are they talking about Mary eating food? How is this a refutation of something? Who is this responding to? Because your average Muslim is going to go, that's a refutation of the Trinity. And you go, what? Wait, what? So
exactly. That's a very good argument.
All right, now here's the downside, Cameron. If you had made a video about Muhammad being a pedophile, that would have. But that's why I'm bringing it up, because we talked earlier about different kinds of people.
This is embarrassing. I'll just say that the whole time. This is embarrassing how bad this is.
Yeah. So either Muhammad was a pedophile. So that is yeah, the downside is there are certain stuff that really the very emotionally charged stuff, people, that's the stuff that spreads most rapidly. With that said, there are like 10,000 videos and articles and posts and so on responding to certain things. And so I have to say, I think these kinds of videos will do well because people aren't making videos like this. You know what I mean? It's a different approach. And so just breaking down individual verses and going through them carefully and making well-crafted arguments out of these and so on. Yeah, I think that'll be a good approach. And not all just AP. Oh, Islam is so dumb.
I think it was a very good video. It makes the point very well. It delivers it quite well.
Are you converting to Christianity?
It does approach the topic from a quite nicely put perspective, and it will obviously, if somebody responds to it, if a Muslim responds to it, it will invite the regular.
I would love to see responses. I would absolutely love it. So I really do hope someone does
should.
that.
And by the way, that's the goal. Keep making these arguments. There's an awesome line where, do we respond to this and thereby bring more attention to it?
Yes.
And then once they go past it, okay, we have to respond to this, but there's that line whether we respond, do we respond or not respond? I like kind of being right on that line, but that's a good place to be. If they respond to you, they help. If they respond, then they help draw more attention to it, and then people who are watching them became familiar with an issue they didn't know about. If they don't respond, they're like, "Look, why is everyone running from me? They can't refute it. They can't refute it. That's why they're not responding." Good stuff.
I would love to see some responses.
It was pretty good. I would just for a more healthy conversation, I would in future videos abstain from offensive language such as that this is ignorant or
everyone's stupid except you and stuff.
Embarrassing and so on. Like this is not a healthy way to conduct a conversation, and I would actually like to condemn you in the most serious in the strictest way. For using that kind of language, especially in times like these when Islamophobia has become such a problem. Other than that, I think the video is great. Man.
Yeah, notice Cameron. Oh, Trump won. Now I can say whatever I want about Muslims.
Now I can say it's embarrassing.
Oh, you can't stop me because Trump will defend me. No, cool. And guys, you might need to refresh it because I didn't have the link at the beginning of the video, but I added the link after we started. So the link is in the description box if you want the original video to share and so on. So check that out. Yes, you can screenshot it, share it that way. You can learn it. That's what I think is the best. What's best for Cameron is sharing the video and stuff. So please do some of those. With that said, Cameron, I asked you to come on and discuss your video. I don't know what your schedule is like. Me and AP are going to be going through some super chats, so you're welcome to hang out and respond to things, or you can bolt because, again, I don't know how much.
If there's any super chats for me that you've got, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I will take off.
I kind of won't know until I go through them. Wait, let me see if I can skim them over here.
If this was a powerful video, then why are there still Muslims? You have been destroyed.
He's got a point. Let's see. Let's see. Daily Wire with closed captioning. That's funny. You don't get it. People call us AP and D Wood. I mean, in DW. But whenever AP reads the comments, he says it's referring to Daily Wire and the Associated Press. Let's see.
So now we have closed captions.
Let's see.
Doesn't sound like it.
No, I'm seeing some that are directed at you, but it's not something you need to answer.
Gotcha.
All right, I think you're good if you've got some.
Okay.
All right, man.
All right, guys. Appreciate the invite.
Yep, and we will answer for you. Oh, and everyone, if you're tuning in late, Cameron has a debate on his channel tomorrow. What time?
It is at 12 p.m. Central.
12 p.m. Central Time, Sam Shamoun versus Khalil Andani on the Islamic dilemma. That could be, I predict, very interesting.
Sam has done his homework on this one.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
all right, guys.
Everyone check that out. All right. Catch you later, man.
See you later.
See you, CC.
All right. Let's take some super chats. What got my head out of my butt, I think this is a response to you, was a video called God in Ancient China. And they talk about how the language tells the story about creation, the Tower of Babel, the flood foretells Jesus being salvation.
China.
We'd have to see some good evidence of that.
I love China.
My theology professor said that he doesn't like the Gospel of John because it's authoritative and really different from the other Gospels that was written way after the others. There's no good evidence that it was written way after the others. That's false. The claim, the idea, there's only one real basis for claiming that it's late. Namely, it's very theologically developed, right? And so the claim is, early Christians wouldn't have had this very developed theology and so on. What's the problem with that? We have the letters of Paul, and Paul had an equally, at least, probably more developed theology than we see in John. Because John's a gospel. Paul is actually expounding upon theology. So we know we can date the letters of Paul. And so we know there was very developed theology and Christology early on. I mean, in Philippians 2, Paul quotes an early Christian hymn that is about the deity of Christ. That's about the deity of Christ and Jesus being equal with the Father, and yet not considering that status something to be grasped, but lowering himself into creation, taking the very nature of a servant and so on. It's very developed. I mean, it's very similar to John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. So, the apostle, the theology in the Apostle Paul is a refutation of the idea that very developed theology has to come late. Because we know that's not true. We know there was very developed theology, not just from the Apostle Paul, but in things he's quoting early on. With that said, if you're going with internal evidence, by the way, guys, here's the real reasoning. And if you believe in God and believe that God reveals things, and you believe that Jesus can predict things and so on, you should completely reject this reasoning. But here's the reasoning. In the Synoptic Gospels, in the Gospel of Mark, Jesus predicts the fall of Jerusalem. Jesus predicts the conquering of Jerusalem. That happened in 70 AD. So if you're some sort of naturalist or you don't believe in actual prophecies and so on, then you say, okay, therefore the Gospel of Mark must have been written after 70 AD because that's the only explanation for how Jesus could have predicted the fall of Jerusalem. Now, keep in mind, even from a naturalistic perspective, that's not true. Jesus could just be looking around going, these people really keep ticking off the Romans and this is not going to go well. In other words, you could just know how the Romans deal with people who keep screwing with them. You could know that. So in other words, it's not even true that the Gospel of Mark would have to be post 70 AD, even if you're a complete naturalist. If you're not, if you actually believe in God and believe in prophecies and so on, you'd get something very different. So anyway, that reasoning is so Mark has to be after 70 AD because there's a prophecy about something that happens in 70 AD. Therefore, it has to be after that. And Matthew and Luke appear to be familiar with Mark, and therefore they came later. So they're like, let's say 75, 80 and so on. And then the Gospel of John is more theologically developed. And so you're talking way down the road. If you drop that assumption, you get something very different. You get the book of Luke the book of Acts ends in the early 60s. And yet we know historically all this very important stuff, the martyrdom of Peter, the martyrdom of Paul, and so on, that happens in the late 60s. The book of Acts just abruptly ends when Paul gets to Rome, and they leave out all this very important stuff that happened right after that. the most obvious conclusion is that that's Luke brought people up to date. This is what is happening right now, which would mean that Acts is sometime in the early 60s. Luke was part 1 because there's Luke Acts. Therefore, Luke would be earlier, and Luke was familiar with Mark, and therefore now you're dealing with Mark in like the 50s or something like that at the latest. And even with the Gospel of John, there are indications in the Gospel of John that is early. Like he talks about things in the Gospel of John as if they're still going on, and they weren't after 70 AD. So he talks about these things still going on, these places still being here, and they were not there after 70 AD. So anyway, point is, your theology professor should question some of his assumptions.
Yes.
And stop being so freaking racist all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Apostate prophet. Do you know what that means?
I largely agree with that. I do have my issues with one of the Nas, though.
Yeah. You're wrong, Tim. You've been refuted. Cristobal says, CC, I didn't forget about you. My bad. I'm new to your channel. I liked your discussion with Jimmy Aiken. Haha, he already left, so.
Thank you. Thank you.
Too bad. He's going to be mad at you perpetually. Moo Joe. Oh, the super sticker. Hippo character spins around in his chair, arms flung up in the air. Hippos. They like hippos on this. AP, don't fall for peer pressure from them religious.
From them religious folks.
Not sure anyone's noticing. AP doesn't seem very susceptible to peer pressure, in case no one's noticed. What?
Yeah, that's true. That can be true.
AP and D Wood, Associated Press and Daily Wire. Imagine that Islam never existed and you weren't pro-Islam bashers. What would you be? How do you imagine your life? And what would you do for a living? We'd be humiliating someone else.
Yeah, I would probably be going after other people instead.
Yeah, we would find someone else. It's just most fun with Islam, and Muhammad's the easiest target ever in all of history to make fun of.
I would find someone else to bully, definitely.
Yeah, we'd be bullying someone else, and we'd be obsessed with that, and we'd be doing shows about that. We'd be something else bashers. We would find something else to bash. Ryan says, I'm a sextarian. I add Mary, Joseph, and Muhammad to the Trinity. You see, this is the proof. Alhamdulillah, Father, I'm in Mary and Joseph and Jesus and Holy. Okay.
I was thinking of that earlier. Like, what if you start having a Christian position and include Mary into the Trinity, and then say, you see, the Quran was right.
All right, all along. How could Muhammad have known this? That this person would include? Would have 4 people.
You see?
Fox McLeod says, is that capturing Christianity? He's my favorite. Said no one ever. Gosh, I'm mean. But he was being such a bully in that video, such a mean bully in that video. I feel like someone has to.
It felt like if I was a Muslim and I was watching the video, I would feel traumatized.
Could you imagine apostate Aladdin watching that? Like, he would be crying his eyeball. I can't believe they talk about Muslims like that.
Why would you say that about my beliefs?
Just imagine. Just imagine how heartbreaking it would be.
Why would you do that to me?
That dude is funny. Has he been doing anything lately?
I don't know. I don't really care about him.
Did you just say you don't care?
Yeah. That's what
Pretty rude. Pretty rude. No comment from Chris Steggs, but thank you for the super chat. Spooky Eraser, Surah 50, then Surah 47. What about Surah 50, then Surah 47? What, you want us to read those in that order? It's not going to happen. This isn't Read the Quran Day.
Read the Quran Day.
Unless someone knows what this means. The hadiths do say Jesus, Mary, not touched by Satan. That's true. You have one hadith that says Satan touches every child born into the world except Jesus, but you have another one that was just Jesus and Mary, which is interesting because why? I mean, really, why Jesus? Why is Jesus so special? It makes sense from a Christian perspective for Jesus to be so completely unique. It makes no sense from an Islamic perspective for Jesus to be so completely unique. But even if you granted Allah knows best on why Jesus is so unique, why include Mary, especially when the Muslim sources are trying to downgrade them from the exalted status that they're blasting away at Christianity for? Like, in other words, if you want to say Jesus is just a regular man and Mary's just a regular woman, why have all these things in the sources? It's weird. It's weird and confusing.
Muhammad should have said, Satan touches every child, but not the way I touch them.
That's what he should have said. You need to steal that. Fisherman's Corner says to Roadshow, fallacy of the undistributed middle association fallacy. No, not with that. I'm talking specifically. I remember it. I remember how to do it. I remember it with A or B. I just can't remember what it's called. But then I was wondering if there's a way to do it A or B or C, and I can't remember. I have to look that up. Fallacy of the undistributed middle, by the way, is used massively in Islam. In fact, you can make an entire video about the fallacy of the undistributed middle, just going through Muslim arguments. They're really, really bad. I think I brought that up in my debate with, I don't know if I mentioned it, but my debate with Kenny Bomer on whether Jesus was Muslim.
Kenny what?
Kenny Bomer. The guy who said he would lash a black guy. Remember that? Did you ever see that?
Yeah, I did.
What's wrong with that dude? Coloridianism, according to Saint Epiphanius of Salamis and Panarion, a group of syncretized Arab pagan women offered cake and bread to Mary in worship. Are you claiming that's what the Quran is responding to?
Yeah, again, that is one objection that some people bring up, and there is.
I know that gets brought up in the questioning of what the Quran is talking about there.
There is,
and you pointed out earlier that people just don't actually know much about it.
Yeah. There's not much known about them, and it's only later scholarship that suggests that they may have held a Trinitarian belief in where Mary is part of the Trinity, but they pretty much based that on the Quran's statement. You know,
bull, false. Howdy, gents. Have any of you read much Alvin Plantinga? And if so, what? This applies to AP2. Love what you guys do. God bless. Back when I was in graduate school, I read a ton of Alvin Plantinga.
I didn't, but I used to watch Alvin and the Chipmunks when I was a child.
I started off with his famous. What's his famous article? There's a famous article that's like included in multiple anthologies and stuff. Alvin, I don't remember what it's called, but it's phenomenal. Obviously, his book responding to his short book responding to those are pretty standard. So lots of people read that essay, and then they read his short book responding to the problem of evil. What is the famous one called? But then I read some of his books and so on. He has an awesome book on Christianity and science. I'm trying to. Why can't I remember that? Who knows what that famous paper is called? It's everyone who's
everyone knows. You're the only person who doesn't know.
Everyone who goes into philosophy. Ascendant says warranted Christian belief. No, that is a massive book. I've read some of that, but that's not the article. I'm saying because if people want to start off with Alvin Plantinga, there's one famous article that always comes up. What is it, man? And it's awesome. I judge philosophers based on whether, when I finish an article or a book, if it seems like my thinking has become more clear, like clarified, then I think it's good. Even if I disagree with the conclusion, it's like I'll read this and it will clarify some concepts in my mind. I'm like, oh, that's good. Okay, I'm just going to look through his papers here. I will find it. It's going to take me about 30 seconds.
So based on that, what did you think about the Quran?
The most powerful thing ever.
Okay. Now
Oh, there we go. Is belief in God properly basic? I'm trying to think if he had. Let's see. That's the topic. I'm trying to see if there's another one.
God based.
Oh, what is it? Is belief in God properly basic?
Basically.
I think that's the title. I'd have to check it out, but phenomenal article. Planiga, insanely intelligent and very clear, very precise. Good stuff. But yeah, I've read several books by Planiga, many sections of books. If I didn't read the whole books, there's chapters I read that are on specific topics. Even came up in my doctoral dissertation because he was one of the guys who was responding to Paul Draper, the guy who's, that was, my entire dissertation is a response to an argument by Paul Draper, and Planiga responded to that too. So yeah, lots of Planiga along the way. Daily Wire with closed captioning. Yeah, I cited that earlier. That's good. D Wood got this question once. Daily Wire and Daily Wire got this question once, but I didn't see the answer, and we got a new guy here. The question is, what your thoughts on sectarian violence between Christians like the Razor gangs of Glasgow? I would say they're not behaving according to the commands and teachings of Jesus, and it's pretty common for people to not obey Christ. And notice it would be the same anyway. Like if a Muslim were doing something that is condemned in Islam, you wouldn't condemn. You'd say he's not being a good Muslim. The problem is there are all kinds of people who are following commands of Muhammad and they're just bad. But I have no idea where someone would get the idea that, hey, I'm a Christian of this group, you're a Christian of that group, let me go slice your face up. It's weird stuff.
That sounds like a fun thing to do, though.
Well, I didn't say it wasn't fun. It's just not something you're supposed to do. Mormonism or Islam? Are you asking whether we would, if we had to choose, we would pick one? Because I would pick Mormonism in like 2 seconds over Islam. Like 2 seconds, not even 2 seconds, a fraction of a second. If you said, David, they're only two, you have to pick one, Mormonism or Islam. Mormonism.
Well, there is a thing, I'm conflicted on that because it's like one of them is more likely to be true than the other. But then again, one of them is not as messed up as the other. I would say that Mormonism is more obviously false than Islam, but it's also much better and much less problematic than Islam. So, I don't know. Difficult question.
I can't say more obviously not. I can't say, but I don't know a ton about Mormonism.
You can't say that it's more obviously false than Islam?
No, I wouldn't say anything is more obviously false than Islam. I'd have to think hard about
Not even the cult of Jim Jones.
Jim Jones. I'd take Jim Jones in a heartbeat. No, I'm just kidding. That's
Yeah, no.
That's some rough stuff. The best deceiver is Lucifer or Satan. This is not an attribute we would attribute to the God of Israel, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Adam, Moses, for God cannot lie or he ceases to be God. It is weird that Jesus calls Satan the father of lies and Allah is the best of deceivers.
Well, in Islam, it's a good thing to be a good deceiver. So,
yeah, you want to be as good a deceiver as possible. Seems to me the incarnation is almost a necessity if God is a transcendent being, as it's the best way to reveal himself to us. Thoughts? Yeah, the problem with the incarnation is Muslims always, in Muhammad too, right? Matter of fact, in that verse that Cameron's going through, Surah 5, verse 75, how can you believe they are divine? They ate food. Okay, that would be that would be one kind of objection if you didn't have the idea of the incarnation. But even today, Muslims will still They'll say, "Oh, you're saying Jesus is God? Okay, well, how could he go to the bathroom?" Okay, yeah. As long as you completely leave out the incarnation, you're right. Yes, that's why theology holds together. Right? It's a coherent whole. It all fits together. You take out a piece, stuff doesn't work. But yeah, incarnation would be pretty important.
You're saying that this is an actual thing that Muslims nowadays still they say. It's like, oh, you believe in God? You believe that God pooped? Seriously, man.
Yeah, I point out to people that when I'm telling people not to be so worried about engaging with Muslims and having discussions with Muslims, that people tend to think, oh, Muslims have these 5,000 different arguments and I'm not familiar with all of them, so I will be embarrassed. Like, no, Muslims have the same 5 or 6 arguments over and over again. And then I point out that some of the arguments sound like different arguments, but they're actually the same argument. So if Jesus is God, how could he die? If Jesus is God, how could he be born? If Jesus is God, how could he go to the bathroom? If Jesus is God, how could he eat food? If Jesus, those sound like those are all the exact same argument, right? It's how can features that are associated with a physical person, with a physical human being, be associated with God, who isn't a physical? Okay, well, that's the incarnation. In other words, the incarnation is the response to all of those kinds of things. But
how can God poop? I debunked you.
Look it up. Guy standing in front of blackboard. Look what up?
Don't look it up.
Hang on. I want to scroll back to see what this was about. Did I miss something here?
Don't look it up.
I'm looking up previous comments. I don't know what this is about. Okay. Earlier comment. What got my head out of my butt? Oh, okay. This was the video called God in Ancient China, and they talk about how the language tells them about creation of the Tower of Babel and so on. Look it up, guy standing in front of a blackboard. Okay, here's the thing, Chaotic Symphony. The guy standing in front of a blackboard breaking all this stuff down could be telling the truth and could have all sorts of valuable information. Me and AP I'm guessing we're in the same boat and that we'd be kind of skeptical until we saw it laid out and had verified what he said. With that said, maybe the most awesome video ever and the most awesome information, very compelling and so on. Yeah. So we'd have to, in other words, neither one of us would probably trust it until we had verified it.
Yeah, we have to conclude that it's powerful stuff and then also say that it's powerful stuff before we can make a decision.
Indeed. Let's see. Asif William Rahman is the name of the CIA man who leaked. Oh, yeah. Did you see that? I was thinking maybe we should go. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. So this is the guy who leaked Israel's planned retaliation against Iran. Asif William Rahman is the name of the CIA man who leaked top secret info for Israel to attack Iran. He was recently arrested in Cambodia. Yeah, I was wondering about that because it said they were looking for him in multiple places and stuff, but I don't know if he had access to it by computer and he was in some other country, or if he's like at the Pentagon and he just did it and then bolted or something like that. I don't know. I have to check out the story, but
it's really messed up. You have Israel sharing as usual information on their operations
because they have to
with the United States, the trusted partner, and you have a Muslim employee coming and leaking that information from within the CIA, and thereby basically attempting to not only destroy Israel's plan, but also to destroy Israel-U.S. relations. It's really messed up that is possible, you know?
Yeah, that's extremely messed up. If I were Israel, I'd be like, I want to know where this information's going in the future. Like, seriously, and I only want to share it with like 1 or 2 people that are really, really trustworthy, because I don't want to hand information to you about battle plans that you leak.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, you can understand Israel needing to share information because, you know, the U.S. is an important ally and some of the stuff may involve the U.S. or repercussions and so on. So you want to keep the U.S. in the loop as to what you're going. But seems like the U.S. should want to keep some serious protocols for who gets this information. And I have to say, given the nature, I wouldn't share that information with anyone named Asif or anyone who's some leftist or something like that. There are certain people I would not share that information with.
Some people will say, "Well, no, that would mean that we're discriminating based on
that's the
based
problem.
on
That's the
background and
problem.
religion
The
and so on."
current administration
You
thinks
have
like
to.
that. Yeah.
You have to discriminate.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to discriminate. Don't be
Yeah.
stupid.
Yeah. In other words, I would only share information about Israel's battle plans with the most trustworthy of the most. Now, keep in mind, a dude named Asif could convince me over time that he is the most trustworthy person on the planet.
Of course.
You'd have to earn my trust. And there's no way this guy earned that kind of trust and then leaked everything. They just thought, oh, well, it would be racist for us not to give all this information to Asif Rahman. And then look what happens. Leaks the plans all over the place. Quran error disproves Islam. Quran 37, verse 12. Muhammad's translation has God wondering / not knowing, and other translations have Mo wondering. Either way, you have a lot of those kinds of situations where it's not clear who these verses are about. That happens a lot in the Quran, and Allah's perfectly clear Quran, which is, for some reason, very frequently, hopelessly unclear. AP looks like a jazzy terrorist for real. Yeah, AP is going.
I am.
When did you start going with that hat look? Is that after you went to the UK?
No, quite recently actually.
So that's a UK style.
It's not UK style. It's AP style.
What religion has the best drip? I don't know what that means.
That's new language. I guess it's supposed to. I don't know what that actually stands for, but it's like charisma or appeal, whatever.
Oh, Ahmadis.
Ahmadiyya.
Yahya's Hot Lips says, I meant more like if you remove theology and philosophy entirely from your life, what life you would have chosen, or any number 2 favorite thing you like to do now. Oh, I think this is a follow up on the question about what would we be doing if we weren't blasting away at Islam. I would just be teaching philosophy at some point. I haven't done a lot in philosophy since I graduated. I think I went to a couple of philosophy. I've gone to some philosophy conferences and stuff since then, but there was just decision time when I realized I'd rather be doing this thing over here than teaching philosophy. I'd rather be doing YouTube. I'd rather be going after Islam. It was, hey, here are things. Keep in mind, guys, responding to Islam, that is not what I'm most interested in. There are like 10,000 things I would be more interested in than going through and exposing Muhammad. I did that because someone needs to do it. Someone else has to do it. All these other things in here in the world I would like to be doing, too bad someone needs to be doing this stuff. And so if Islam were not around, yeah, I would be doing something else, and probably in philosophy.
I would probably be a serial killer and try to be
I believe that.
A better one. No, my ambition before this was also, or aside from this, still I still sometimes just kind of want to go there. Would be to go into psychology.
I'm interested in that too. That's probably like my.
And to do something about
my
that.
second biggest interest after philosophy would be psychology. Too much interesting stuff there, man.
I really wanted to go into teaching, and I was kind of on that path. But then it's too much of the divided attention between this and focusing on that kind of stuff. I thought this one has much more. This one is much more at my, my heart beats for this. This is what I want to do. So that's that.
And so can we please see the collapse of Islam, everyone, in the very near future, so me and AP still have some time to do some stuff that we're more interested in than dealing over and over again with, oh, they eat food. This means it's okay to bang a little girl. Refute this.
Yeah, I could have been beating Jeffrey Dahmer's record by now, or something like that, or gone into education instead. Mm-hmm. But instead we're doing this.
All kinds of options. Yeah. And Patriotic Z says, Rob Christian proves Moa was a... What? What do you mean? No, you do have the issues with Muhammad's dad and so on. It ate poo. Muhammad was already a liar, treaty breaker, a thief, and murdered sand pirate. It's pretty horrible language there.
That's pretty racist.
But it's true, he was a liar. But he was known as Al-Amin. He was known as Al-Amin. It's the first thing back in the day when I started taking classes in religious studies and so on. But Muhammad was known as Al-Amin. That's his great reputation.
You see?
The trustworthy. All right, everyone. Let's see. There's this last one here. Drip refers to clothes and garments. Oh, so it's which religion has the coolest clothes and garments?
Oh. I have to say that I have become a little bit biased over the last year or so.
Black Hebrew Israelites.
What?
Have you seen them? They dress like they're out of a Mad Max movie, man.
I know they look like a post-apocalyptic movie set or something. It's weird.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll break it down, and AP can give his answers as well. There are certain Muslims, I think, who look cool. I'm not sure where it comes from. I think actually it tends to be the ones that call themselves some version of Andalus and something like that. So maybe it's some certain gear. I think there are Muslims who look cool. I think Hasidic Jews look cool. I mean, and any of the Jews when they got all their tefillin and stuff like that, and trying to think of who else. There are certain Christian groups that I think are geared up pretty cool. What are your thoughts on this, AP? Who has the coolest fresh gear?
Well, I don't know if it's just my recent bias in looking at things, but I'm pretty impressed with the general Jewish look. I'm not necessarily that impressed with the whole with the Hasidic direction of.
I like it though because it's got like a Blues Brothers type thing with the black hat and the braids coming out. I don't know. It looks cool. It looks cool to me.
Because it's like they take the biblical command of leaving your sides, the side of your hand, and turning it into and they're turning it into a very specific trend of doing those locks on the side and all that, and then the completely black clothing and the black hats and all that. It's interesting. I am more interested in a traditional Jewish way of, I don't know, wearing the tassels, the towelettes, something white and blue and all that. I find it cool. I'm not really impressed with the Islamic appearance at all.
Yeah, most of the time I'm not. I don't know exactly where certain people come from, but certain Muslims and certain headgear and their garments and stuff, I think look pretty cool. Certain Jewish groups, I think, look cool. Certain Christian groups who tend to have traditional dressing and stuff like that, I think, look cool stuff.
Well, I'm wearing this right now. I've adopted of sometimes wearing this just because I think it's kind of a cool thing to do.
What is that?
This is the thing that Jews wear, the tzitzit, the tassels, the fringes, the knots.
Black Hebrew Israelites have tassels.
I wear this sometimes because I kind of like it, and it has a good idea in the Bible, which is that wear it to remember God's commandments.
Now, by the way,
it actually does have a good mental thing.
Yeah, that's something that's very cool. Like things that have a role, right? And being constantly reminded of things. In fact, there's a view that a lot of the commands in the Torah are actually to reinforce an idea as far as not mixing certain foods like dairy and meat and not mixing different kinds of threads in your garments and stuff. It was to be a constant reminder of not mixing with pagans and their ideas. That everything you look around and see is supposed to be a reminder of who you who you owe allegiance, and of not mixing that with anything else. And so, anyway, it's just, I don't know, interesting stuff.
That's what they do. It's good stuff.
That's what they do. Powerful stuff. And finally here, the only time Momo split the moon is when he bent over. It's actually pretty offensive, but my next video, unless something weird happens, my next video that I'm planning to record is about whether Muhammad performed miracles. And I will not be using your joke, but I will be talking about Muhammad supposedly splitting the moon.
I made a video about that a while ago. I should just do that again. I like that topic. Because I think it's actually one of those things, one of those topics that refutes at least the traditional Islamic perspective, which is that Muhammad allegedly had this huge miracle and all that. Mm-hmm. And I think you can easily demonstrably disprove that this ever happened. And refuting that means damaging Islam seriously.
And by the way, I mean, I'm just doing it because I want people to have easy access to all the Quran verses where Allah makes excuses for why Muhammad didn't have any miracles. And then they pick these two things, his night journey, which doesn't even mention Muhammad at all. And it's not clear. There's nothing about Barak or anything. It doesn't even tell you what the place is, just as the farthest mosque. And, later they interpret that as Jerusalem and so on. But it's extremely vague. And then in your earliest sources on what that means, on your earliest sources on applying this to Muhammad, it's actually some sort of vision. Some sort of vision or dream that he had, and yet they're treating it like this is the proof of a miracle. And then the splitting of the moon, they can't even agree on what that's talking. They can't even agree on what that's talking about. And so, overall, ladies and gentlemen, you're trying to continue chipping away, right? Trying to continue chipping away at their arguments and so on. We are still in a race. The Dawa guys know that their arguments fail. That's why they usually do not engage people who are familiar with the Dawa script anymore. And so they're feeling it. They're feeling it. Arguments that they used 10 years ago, they won't touch them right now unless they know they're talking to someone who's completely ignorant. We want to take away all the ignorance. And there's still plenty of Muslims who hear things from their imams and they've never seen the refutation. In other words, probably most Muslims don't even know that the Quran repeatedly denies that Muhammad could perform miracles. They don't know it. So we just have to keep sharing that information wherever we can. More and more people catch on, more and more people, because again, it's a race. The Dawa guys, they're trying to kind of hold the line, hold back the avalanche of apostasy as much as possible, hoping that they'll get to a point where they can just subjugate people and not allow us to criticize Islam. And of course, we're in a rush to make sure they never get that kind of control over us. But it's kind of coming down to the wire, right? Like it's close with Islamic birth rates and so on, and these guys spreading, and Western nations inviting in as many jihadis as possible. Point is, these are times when you got to keep your eye on what's happening, and everyone's got to get to work. This is not a time to say, oh, this guy's making awesome videos on YouTube. You got to learn this stuff. You got to learn this stuff and be sharing it. It is way more powerful if you can explain something to a Muslim than you just saying, here's a video. Way more powerful. It's in the context of a conversation and so on. So learn the stuff. We've all got work to do. And let's see, last one here. Them Orthodox Christians got good drip, in my opinion. Yeah, that's one of the groups I was thinking of when we were in Orthodox Christians.
Oh yeah, they do.
Some of them got some cool gear.
Yeah, I like some of the things. I don't know who that is specific to, but some of those things that are like the Bishop Marmari, for example, wears this thing that is just very plain, but it has these designs on top of here and so on. I think it looks very cool.
Yeah, I saw. What's his name, man? We're about to cut out, but
oh yeah, I like that too. Yeah.
What is his name? Any other day of the year. Oh, I don't know how I forgot this. NT Wright. So, he's been lots of things over the years. Scholar, there are people watching who can't stand the guy. I'm just talking about what he wore. The first time I ever saw him at a conference, he was speaking and he had on, check this out, AP. So he's a bishop, and he had on a purple dress shirt, but it was like metallic, like shiny. It was like purple, metallic, shiny. And he had on this giant, like, bling gold cross, right? And for some reason, if someone told me I'm going to wear a purple, metallic purple shirt and a big blown cloth, and I'm an old guy, I'd be like, dude, you're going to look like an idiot. He looks so, I don't know. He looked pretty cool to me while he was speaking.
Let's base it.
Cool stuff. All right, guys, I'll actually be live again tomorrow at 5 with Jai and DOC, Daughter of Christ. They said they want to go through some stuff by Yasser Qadi on pregnancy. They said it is hilariously stupid. So you say hilariously stupid, I'm suddenly interested in. So we're going to be talking about tomorrow. I'll be here at 5 with Jai and DOC and see what they've got about Sheikh Yasser Qadi's view of pregnancy, apparently defending some stuff in the Muslim sources. We'll see what they got.
They are very good, Jai and DOC.
What do we got coming up, AP? Anything? You know?
Tomorrow night we shall also be live on my channel, unless you say, "Oh, I have to drive to some other place."
Nope. We're good. We're good being live tomorrow on your channel. And hey,
What?
unless there's something else you want to talk about, the debate is going to be, I think at 1 or something tomorrow. He said.
Oh yeah.
So we could, if you're watching that live and you want to discuss it, that's always a possibility.
That's a good idea, actually. I would
But
like to.
if it's too soon, we could always check that out sometime this weekend. Matter of fact, I don't know how long they're going, but if it's a long debate, it might take us a couple things to go through it. But that'll depend on what happens. I'm anticipating it's going to be very interesting. They have massively different approaches. Khalil is more philosophical, Sam's more theological and just scripture-based and so on. So some of it, I expect they're going to be arguing past each other a bit, but it is a very interesting argument. I actually am interested in Khalil's response because most Muslims give very stupid responses. They just completely rip verses out of context and don't deal with the issue. And they'll quote verses that are talking about people misrepresenting what's in the scripture and not the corruption of scripture, but they pretend, like that happened in the debate earlier today. But they'll quote passages about people misrepresenting scripture. You say it's corrupted. Okay, you're not that doesn't fit together with everything else the Quran says. But Khalil, I'm 99.8% sure Khalil is going to have a stronger response than what you would get from a bunch of Dawah guys.
Yeah, the only problem is that he's not
interested
a real,
in it. Yeah, that's the
the
only
only problem is that he's not a real Muslim, but I
He's
guess
a philosopher.
How dare you do philosophy? You're sick. Well, they're both very intelligent and interesting people in different ways. Both
It's
Sam
people.
Shimon and Khalil and Khalil Andani. I'm curious to see how it will unfold. Inshallah, we will check it out.
Oh, here you have. Hey, these monks look kind of intimidating. Yeah, is that? Yeah, these guys look. I just looked it up. Their robes. It does. These guys look like something out of like Lord of the Rings or something. Pretty based.
Who? Shimon.
Just look up the pictures and how these guys are geared up. They look pretty cool.
Wow.
Pretty dope, isn't it? You got to get one of those. You got to get one of those robes, AP. And Patriotic Z, you guys should do a video with Red Pen Logic. Heck just did a video. He just did a video with Archbishop with a rainbow heart pin and pink robe saying Jesus sinned. What? Why do I want to be? Who's Red Pen Logic? I've seen that name before. You know who that is?
Never heard of.
I've seen that name before. All right, we'll have to see. I don't know.
What are these monks? What is this?
Yeah. Patriotic Z, I tend to stick with people I know. I'm not crazy about new people. New people creep me out. Eternal Vigilance said 2 hours late, so I have to catch up. Thank you both for all you do. God bless you. Thank you, Eternal Vigilance. And again, looks like we'll be having 2 live streams tomorrow. One on my channel early for European viewers. One at our regular time for everyone who likes to stay up late with us. I'll be back this weekend. Should have a video up on Muhammad's miracles pretty soon. And apart from that, we'll catch y'all later.
I have to say, the Crusaders look pretty based too.
That's
But
true
anyway.
too. Maybe we should start dressing like Crusaders. Hey, you are getting better in the sense of, like, before it looked like you were really struggling, whereas now it seems like much more easygoing.
Yeah, it's become easy. I figured it out.
And that, my friends, is the most beautiful sound in the world.
After this.
That too.